All right, I'd like to call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for October 8th, 2019. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Red Brown. Here. Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Tyler Bird.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Carol Frazee.
Here.
Satpal Sidhu.
Here.
Would you all like to rise and join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So a couple of things a little unusual. I understand we have a Boy Scout troop here tonight. Is that correct? Yeah. Welcome. Welcome. I think it's Boy Scout Troop 4003. Is that right? Yeah, good. The next item up is, I just want to clear up a little confusion there might be. I think some people think we are voting on a technical difficulties. I'm good. Okay. Well, I'm not enough. I'm good, but I'm okay. I'm online again. All right. There was discussion about whether we were voting on a Lake Samish ordinance tonight. We are not voting on that tonight. It is not on the agenda. Further announcements is if you please turn off your cell phones. If you're going to be handing out any paperwork to council members, please give one copy to the clerk for our office files. First item up is from the Committee of the Whole, AB 2019-500, is a discussion regarding the potential property acquisitions for the flood control zone district. And I need a council member to make a motion.
I move that, I have it here too, move to authorize county executive acting on behalf of Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors to execute an option agreement to purchase property as discussed in executive session this afternoon.
Second. We need a second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, with the clerk.
Oh, was this 1, 2, or 3?
The last one.
Was the last one?
Good question.
Yeah,
This
it was the
was,
last one.
The last one.
was
First
the,
two were just for discussion. It was the last one.
yes.
Well,
Right.
it was, what did we say?
The first one required no motion.
Right?
Both of didn't require, only the last one did.
Okay.
I believe you're correct.
It was, I'm pretty sure it was the last one. We'll say it was, oh, whatever, I can't say anymore.
Was it?
There's 3.
Yeah.
Or 3, and I think it was number 3.
I just explained to people who are watching. So when we are dealing with property acquisition things, and we have to talk about an executive session, so we're not tipping the market to what might be going on. So yeah, we can't really expand on it out here.
Maybe
but-
Tyler could, Tyler's sitting there, he probably knows. Tyler Schroeder.
This was in
I
the,
wasn't thinking you were asleep, but that's funny.
but the
But it
motion
was the
is,
last one,
I need something
we,
to vote on.
no, we have a motion, we have a second, and if I, for discussion, this is simply to get the executive to start the negotiations and then to come back to us with what the potential
On
cost might
the
be.
one property that was recommended for acquisition.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right, fine.
Okay, that's okay.
All right, further discussion. Seeing none, you're saying we don't need a roll call vote, or we? Okay, because that's what's on my script. Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item up is a special presentation, a report from the Behavioural Health Advisory Committee on the Behavioural Health Program Fund. This is AB 2019-497. Mr. Phillips.
Evening. My name is Chris Phillips, and I am the chair of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. As I think most of you know, we meet regularly to understand the needs of the community and to make recommendations on funding issues. All those funds are collected through the 1/10 Hartgrove dollars. And Councilperson Brenner also serves on this committee. The Behavioral Health Advisory Committee seeks to support a full continuum of prevention, intervention, treatment, and aftercare for people who face mental health issues and substance abuse issues. So there was a report. It's in your packet. I'm going to cite three things very quickly. One is the report highlights the contracts that the Department of Health has with all 7 school districts. And as you can see in the report, there's 1,137 youth received substance abuse and mental health services through those 7 contracts. An additional 12,000 people were contacted through large trainings, community events, and the like. Schools have been a great vehicle for getting services to the community, and in communities where there are no other services as well. More than 60% of all the youth who were served were outside of Bellingham. These contracts provide essential school-based services, but they also connect to services outside the schools in the community. My main thing that I'm doing here tonight actually is to introduce some people who are working in the schools, and they are from the Blaine School District. Randy Ellsbury, who is Executive Director of Federal and Special Programs, and Katri Jones, who is a mental health counselor, will share with you briefly the work that they're doing in the Blaine School District. Thank you. Oh, actually, I should say, do you have any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. About 11 years ago, mental health funding was taking a big hit throughout the state. And about a year later, I was contacted by Ann Deacon from the Department of Health. And she said, Randy, what would you do if you had additional funds to support mental health for students and families in your district? So that began the discussion. And since that time, I've been a part of this grant, and we have served hundreds of students and families. We have provided professional development for staff, direct services, excuse me, and preventative intervention services. We have, most of the funding goes for staffing. We have a family service center that provides supports to low-income families, coordinates professional development for staff, and we recently started a Blaine Birch Bay Thrives coalition with the Department of Health, and that is to help us connect with our local in Blaine area service providers. So we're looking at data community-wide, and we share resources on a monthly basis. That has opened up a lot of avenues, and that started about 1.5 years ago. And one of the other things that we did, I think we're in our 2nd year, is we funded this fine young lady who is our mental health counselor, and she also coordinates and writes grants for additional services. So I'd like to introduce Katri.
We've provided you with a handout with kind of an overview of what mental health services look like in Blaine. I also just wanted to share a story with you about one of the students that's been served through our funding over the last year. So we were able to serve 77 students in our district with mental health counseling on site during the 18-19 year, and this is a story about one of those students. Last year, about 2 weeks after school started, a 9th grade girl, we'll call her Mariah, rode the city bus to Blaine High School to register herself for school. She met with the school counselor who asked her about where she had moved from, who she lived with, and how she had come to Blaine. Mariah began talking and then began to cry. At the end of their meeting, she said, "I'm ready. I've never told anyone about my life, but it's time. I need to talk about this, and I have a lot to say." Mariah did not have health insurance. Her mother worked very long days, but they lived below the poverty line. They didn't have friends or family in town. They weren't connected to the community, and they didn't have a way to access mental health care. Mariah's school counselor referred her for school-based mental health services, and I got to meet with her 2 days later. When prompted, "Tell me about why you're here," Mariah began to cry. She did not stop crying during our weekly sessions for 3 months. She talked about violence she had witnessed, ways she had been hurt, and the symptoms that she was living with. Mariah couldn't sleep, she couldn't focus, she had debilitating triggers and fears when she went out in the community. I helped Mariah and her mother access support for basic needs through connecting them with our Family Service Center. I encouraged Mariah to practice skills like journaling, meditation, and breathing. During our most difficult sessions, she and I would just breathe together. After about 3 months of processing her trauma, Mariah began to show signs of change during our time together. She stopped crying. She stopped shaking when she talked about hard things. She started asking me questions like, "Who do you think I might be capable of being?" Which, of course, I responded with the classic, completely predictable therapist answer, "Well, Mariah, who do you think you might be capable of being?" We spent over a month talking about her future and the ways that Mariah could move forward in her life while also acknowledging the wisdom, courage, and kindness that her pain had enhanced in her life. We talked about college and careers that she would be amazing at. We talked about the kind of home she wanted, the kind of future she wanted, and the person that she wanted to be for her community. One afternoon, 4 months after meeting Mariah, I was working at the elementary school, and I got a phone call from Mariah's school counselor. She had come into school that morning and told him that she was moving out of our district the next day. She wanted to say goodbye. I got to meet with her one last time, and I told her everything that I knew she was capable of being. I reminded her of her courage, her creativity, her capacity for love, and her deep desire to live a life of wholeness. I had one last chance to model breathing for her because saying goodbye was not easy. I wanted to share this story with you because she was one of my favorites, but also because it exemplifies in my mind just the magic and the resourcefulness of school-based student and family services. Mariah came to us, her basic needs were not met, she had experienced trauma, she had never told her story, she was living with daily symptoms of her emotional pain. At the precise moment in time when she was ready to talk, we were able to provide her with an intervention. We were there for exactly the amount of time that she needed, and her school counselor intuitively knew that she needed someone right then. Because of the system within our school, we were able to provide that intervention quickly and get her the support that she needed. So I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your funding. This helps us as school staff to meet the needs of our students, whether it's their basic needs, need for community, mental health needs. Your support of the Blaine School District and for all the schools in Whatcom County is truly a gift. It is making a difference in the lives of some of our most vulnerable, but also most amazing community members. So thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, could you state your name?
Autrey Jones.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Good work.
Okay, the next item up, we're going to have public hearings. And audience members who wish to address the council during a public hearing are asked to sign up at the back of the room prior to the meeting, and the council chair will ask those who've signed up to form a line at the podiums. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and optionally include city of residence. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of the time limits and inform speakers when they have 30 seconds left to conclude comments. When a large group of individuals supports the same position on an issue, the selection of 1 or 2 representatives to speak on behalf of the entire group is encouraged. And when using the microphone, please speak close enough that you can hear yourself on the speakers, and this will ensure that everybody can hear your comments. Now, we have 2 public hearings that are on specific issues, and we ask that you only speak to those issues, and then after those 2 public hearings, there's an open public session where you may speak on any issue relevant to county government. First item up is an ordinance amending the Whatcom County Code 9.32, unlawful discharge of firearms, to establish a no shooting zone in the Drayton Harbour area of Whatcom County. This is AB 29-472. And before, is there a staff report on this? There's not. And then, is there a representative from the City of Blaine here who wishes to speak to this issue? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm familiar with some of you through the years that I've been involved in Blaine on the city council and currently as mayor. I really can empathize with the position you all have in listening to various viewpoints on issues and trying to come to the best decision based on all the viewpoints that are presented to you. I certainly can empathize with that, and I understand. I am speaking in favor of the ban. First of all, my name is Bonnie Onion, Mayor of Blaine. I am in favor of the ban on shooting in Drayton Harbor, that the council took action with resolution number 1765-19, which I believe you have probably read in your packets this evening or before this time. I am personally in favor of this, as well as, of course, a member of council who voted for this resolution, mainly because our citizens have had repeated calls to our police during the hunting season for people who have maybe even inadvertently wandered from the county portion where it is legal to shoot and have gotten close to the boundary where in Blaine no shooting is allowed. So it's a very difficult thing to police. We don't have any boats in our police department. So if someone kind of wanders, either intentionally or not, out of the area, it's very impossible for us to police. So we're asking for your assistance in this regard. There are 22 other no shooting zones in the county that the county council through the years have designated. And I'm not sure of all the specific instances in all of those areas. There have been specific reasons, I'm sure, why it's been determined that that should not be a shooting zone. I'm asking that you consider extending this to Drayton Harbor. We have a populated zone of housing around the harbor, which is affected, both with the shooting and the possible injury, as well as the noise, which begins about 5 o'clock in the morning and ends, at dusk, I believe. So we do have these repeated calls to our police department, and we would like to have your assistance in just making the entire Drayton Harbor area a no-shooting zone. It would make it so much more understandable to everybody, and I would think there are other areas in the county that these hunters can go to shoot ducks or other waterfowl. I'm certainly not anti-hunting of animals or the people who hunt them, not in any way, shape, or form. But I would ask that in this specific instance, because it's an urban zone, that you would consider approving the ban in Drayton Harbor. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I think one of the council members would like to ask you a question.
Why don't you just annex the area and do it as the city?
Maybe I will defer to our city manager or our attorney. City manager. This is
I'll
Michael
be the
Jones, our
first of
city
those two.
manager.
Yeah, Michael Jones, Blaine City Manager. Mr. Byrd, it's outside of our urban growth area. The water boundaries were taken out of our UGA by Whatcom County back in around 2009. When the UGA was retracted, it was retracted to the existing city limits. So that's not an option.
Why was it taken out, do you recall?
It was a population analysis that was conducted, and multiple cities had their UGAs reduced in size. The Birch Bay UGA was reduced in size. Blaine, I believe Linden at the time, perhaps Ferndale. It was a kind of a sweeping action because of findings from the Growth Management Hearings Board that the UGAs were oversized.
At what point was the Spit annexed?
Approximately 1980.
Were there any other staff members that you wished to, I see two other people. Were you intending to make comment as well?
As a council member,
Who would like to speak?
My name is Mary Lee Stewart. I am a city councilor in Blaine, and I first brought this complaint to our council because one of my constituents complained bitterly. 5 o'clock in the morning, repeatedly they were woken up. And we're dealing with water and sound travels. And again, you have a circle of housing all around that area. So there's a considerable number of people there, plus guests at the resort, Semiahmoo Resort, that are affected by this shooting in the morning, early in the mornings, and on and on and on. And so he asked me to bring it forward. I brought it forward. It was then presented to our chief of police, who said, the center of that is outside my jurisdiction. I get complaints all the time. I do not have the manpower to deal with this, in addition to everything else. So this has been 6 years ago that this was first brought forward, and it's taken this long to get to the Whatcom Council, to get you to understand the situation that we're dealing with, and hopefully try and do something about it, to please allow us to have the ban on the entire area, not figure out where Blaine ends and it's illegal and county is county land and it's legal. It's just too much trouble for everybody, and it's too much noise and harassment for all the citizens in that area around Blaine. Thank you.
Michael Jones, Blaine City Manager. Just a couple comments. I'll try to keep this pretty brief. I know you have a long meeting. As I understand it, you have received multiple requests related to this, or multiple letters of support. One, of course, is the resolution from the Blaine City Council, and the City Council does represent about 5,400 county residents. The support letter, I believe you also received recently from the Semiahmoo Resort Association, which is a homeowners association that borders the area, that represents several hundred property owners in the city limits. It indicates their strong support for the proposal. And I believe you also have a petition that was resubmitted to you by a citizen and group of citizens in property adjacent to this water body, signed by about 60 county residents, demonstrating their desire to establish a no shooting zone on adjacent upland areas, I believe it relates to. I don't think it's the water, but it is immediately adjacent area that's been developed in the Blaine UGA and is at an urban density. One of the things that we've been asked about is data related to how many instances have occurred. That unfortunately creates a challenge for us because we switched to the Whatcom 911 system just this year in 2019. Prior to that, we didn't have the same kind of recording that you might expect and be familiar with. We used the Border Patrol for dispatch for 911 prior to that. And people could also, in the small town setting, still call the police department and request service that way rather than going through 911. So we have very few records of the number of calls that have occurred over time. But what I can tell you anecdotally, having worked for the city for 13 years in one capacity or another, is this issue has come up again and again and again, year after year. And the police do need to respond and try and determine, is the person in, is the person out, and spend time taking that action. And our citizens, as the mayor and council member have both mentioned, have brought this forward multiple times. I think the rest of these items are probably covered by already by the comments from the mayor, so I'll leave it at that unless you have any questions for me.
Have you done any outreach to those houses to let them know what the issue is?
We have. I mean, we've responded to people that we've supported letters or we've supported articles written in the Northern Light, which is very helpful with us, but we haven't done like mailers or that kind of thing to say this is what the law is and this is why it's occurring there and why we are not taking action, that sort of thing. No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Plomba. I am on the Semiahmoo Resort Association board, and I know that we sent a very strong letter of support of the ban, but I just wanted to make a few personal comments, some of which are a little repetitive because I'm hearing the same things, but it is true that the Blaine Police Department is really frustrated by this issue. They're constantly getting calls, and there's not a thing they can do. I think that they would be supportive of this ban. As has been mentioned, Drayton Harbor is completely surrounded by homes, And there's no enforcement. There's nobody checking to see if those hunters are beyond the border, beyond the boundary at which supposedly their shots are safe. So a lot of people, I live right above the harbor, and I'm nervous. I'm nervous when I see them shooting in my direction because I don't know how far out they are. And as has been mentioned, the shooting starts on the weekends at 5 a.m. and it goes all day long, all day into the dusk. And the last comment I want to make is that we have a very large eagle population in Semiahmoo, and I volunteer in wildlife rehab, and we are constantly seeing eagles and swans come in with lead poisoning. And I know that lead shot has been banned for several years now for shooting waterfowl in Washington State. But again, there's no enforcement. There's nobody checking to see if new lead is being added to that harbor when they're out hunting.
Birds have injuries, like lead pellets when you?
Yes, they do. They do. Yep. And they usually die. One lead pellet will kill an eagle.
For the letter of support from the homeowners association, how did that go about? Was that just the board, or did you survey all of the homeowners?
We didn't survey all the homeowners, but we asked homeowners for comment. I can't say, what % of people are supportive of this. I don't know that.
Kind of the board is in support, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just before you speak, you're representing? Okay. Well.
Isn't there a list?
No, because I'd originally asked for comments from the City of Blaine. So if you're not from the City of Blaine, just respectfully, I'm going to ask you to wait because I'm going to let people speak in order that they've signed up here. So that's all.
Staff, but based on the uniform, are you Fish and Wildlife?
Would you like, did you intend to
Ask some
speak?
questions? Come up.
And just, this is a little bit out of sequence the way we normally do things, but I think given that this was not initiated by county government, I want to give the benefit of the other government agencies that have provided brought this issue forward. So would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Ryan Valentine, law enforcement officer with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Okay, you oversee this area, or?
Correct.
Tell us about this. Is there off the cuff?
Yes. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I can give you a little bit about my background. I've been an officer with the department for 18 years, 16 of which have been up here in Whatcom County. I clearly cannot speak to the response that the City of Blaine law enforcement, what they respond to. We take calls separately from them. I have to politely disagree with some of the other comments that were made earlier. There is, in my 16 years, I have had maybe a handful of calls relating to hunting in Drayton Harbor, most of which is primarily noise related. All of my conversations have been, I always appreciate and enjoy being able to ask the public and, for public safety issue primarily, and being able to take care of that. And none of the cases have been public safety in nature. They've been sound related. And so I try to do the best I can and educate about hunting and the importance of that and the benefit of that to waterfowl populations. In speaking about the time frame, our waterfowl season opens this weekend. The hours in which they open are 6:50 a.m. Waterfowl season occurs during the fall and winter months. And if you know anything about that, at 5 a.m. you can't see the hand in your face, let alone birds to even be able to take shots at. And so I don't know where the 5 a.m. timeframe comes from. I'm not going to speak for Blaine if law enforcement officers up there have dealt with those calls. I certainly have not. Just trying to think of, in regard to the lead poisoning, that really hasn't been a large issue for us due to the fact that current ammunitions have really become more effective in terms of non-toxic shot. So in terms of eagles being shot, rarely do I ever experience that in my line of work. More often they're hit by power lines. Most lead ingestion comes from birds feeding in areas that are very slight, low marsh areas where they can ingest lead that way. Eagles may be able to get that from another transfer of eating something else, potentially. I have not received any calls of anybody shooting eagles up in that area in my 16 years. Any other questions that I can?
What is the actual hunting season?
October 13th is this year, whatever this Sunday is. I guess, I believe it's the 13th or 12th, or sorry, Saturday, the 12th. Normally it runs through the end of January, towards the end of that time frame, of which each week the time changes. Any hunters that have reached out to me, that when I've talked to them and asked me about hunting that area, I always give them information about and actually email maps to them, the ones that we can provide, that we find online from City of Blaine, being able to show them the areas that they need to be, explain to them distances. Most shotguns, most of the shot only travels probably 100, 150 yards, depending on angles and how they shoot. Wind can certainly play a factor in that, but again, I've never had a verified complaint in my 16 years of a hunter hitting a home with pellets in a safety issue.
Is there a buffer in place?
Not that I know of. Most of the information that I give them is about showing them where the city limit boundaries actually are. And so always explaining to hunters, and hunters go through, and before you can hunt here in the state, most hunters have to go through a hunter education course where they go through all those things and are trained and taught about distances and how to hunt safely.
Signage?
Around the harbor. There's not all the way around. If there are any signs, I think they're probably from Blaine, and they could probably speak to that. The Blaine city managers probably could speak better to that than I can. I do know from interacting with Blaine officers that sometimes the issue they have more with is actually on the outside of the Semiahmoo spit, kind of more out towards that way, in terms of distance.
Ms. Frazee and then Ms. Brenner.
So with the businesses that are here, do those people that come in have to have a hunter safety course, or are they just?
All the hunters themselves, or?
Well, I know there's some businesses that do some duck hunting in that area, and I wondered if the visiting people who come for that business need to have a hunter safety course.
Like with guides that take those
Yes.
people out? Yes, absolutely. The guide hunters, if they're going to be participating in hunting, yes, they do.
Even the people coming in who are visiting need a hunter safety course?
If they are going to participate in hunting themselves, yes.
By a hunting license, right?
Correct.
Oh, yeah, you say you talked to the officers from Blaine sometimes. Are they aware and they know if somebody calls them to have them call you?
Yes, certainly. I always provide them that information, and I hand out my business cards as readily as I can. Blaine, as a city law enforcement agency, actually does very, very well, and they're very astute with a lot of fish and wildlife laws, more so than I've dealt with some other city agencies. Just, I think it's due to their nature and where they're located. And so I've been very impressed with the work that they do. on those issues. So they handle, with those city codes, you know, and shooting zones within the city, that's something I don't enforce. But I'm deputized with the county for county areas, but.
That's what I mean. If it's outside the city and they get the call, they would just refer them to you?
Yes, absolutely, whenever they can.
Mr. Bird?
We've got some emails about incidents with rifles and handguns and that kind of stuff, as far as shooting generally in the county, not specifically there. For clarity, what firearms are allowed, and what kind of hunting? Is it dish, duck, waterfowl, or?
Right. So when it comes to hunting, our agency actually prohibits, when you're hunting certain types of species, they make the dividing line west of I-5, and they actually have that of all Whatcom County and the islands included in Whatcom County as a firearms restriction area. So high-powered centerfire rifles are not allowed. That people wouldn't use that for hunting waterfowl anyway. The primary mechanism for hunting waterfowl is with a shotgun and shooting shot, which again doesn't travel very far. But other types of species, since you asked, handguns meeting certain requirements in terms of caliber and barrel length in order to deem things that would be safe and humane in harvesting an animal, it's restricted to that. Muzzleloader, black powder firearms,
Those allowed
shotguns.
in this hunting area?
What's that?
Those.
Those are all allowed in west of I-5, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, but again, for the primary issue, I believe, with what we're talking about in Drayton Harbor tends to be with waterfowl. Nobody is using those type of firearms out there on the water.
Councilmember Fraze's question. My understanding is if I come in from out of state or out of the area, I have to get a hunting license, and at that point in time, I have to show or be registered with showing I have taken some sort of safety course before the state will issue a license.
Correct. From my understanding, with all the states that I've dealt with, different states have different degrees as to what they require, but in order to be able to hunt in Washington, you have to have some kind of proof that you have taken a hunter education course somewhere.
How many hunters do you think are out there? I mean, this is probably a giant guess, but.
In my personal experience, not very much. Quite honestly, the reason why is because I believe some hunters just, they've been in there and they just don't feel that as comfortable being around some of that area. And I try to just explain to them what the rules actually are and just to be safe about what you're doing. And I've been very impressed with the hunters that I've dealt with, that haven't caused any public safety issues.
My last question, but do you know how long that's been a hunting zone or area?
So with the state, with the area up here, we have restrictions in terms of the types of species of waterfowl and how much you can harvest. Drayton Harbor is not a specific zone. It falls under the same regulations in terms of the number of migratory waterfowl birds that you can take. So it's not like a specific zone, so to speak, if that makes sense. It's just that there's a requirement to be able to harvest certain numbers of birds.
So my question, in any given year, how many hours would you actually spend working out in Drayton Harbour?
In terms of being out there specifically, boy, tough to give a guess. I mean, I'm one of two Fish and Wildlife officers that patrol basically from the shore inward of Whatcom County, out towards Mount Baker and east of that. So I can tell you I spend hundreds of hours in terms of waterfowl patrols during the season. Specifically, boy, I don't know, 100?
hours, maybe. I'm really just guessing.
In Drayton Harbour?
Yes, around that area, yes, whether it's in that area, yes.
And then is your patrol on land, or do you take out a watercraft as well?
I take out watercraft sometimes, primarily from land.
Okay. All right. Appreciate your time.
Very much. Appreciate it.
So with that, we'll open the public session, and the first
Public hearing.
public hearing. Well, if are you signed up, sir? Sir, we will call people in the order in which they signed up, and those who have not signed up can speak after I've gone through the list of those who have signed up. Yes.
Actually, I have a question for
Sure.
He was just checking to make sure you weren't asleep.
Yeah, make sure you're getting your exercise.
He's looking a bit groggy, though.
How many jumping jacks can you do?
23.
That was fast. That's how many those shooting
Zones there are in Whatcom County.
I was hoping you could do more than that for jumping jacks. When it comes to the noise in the county, kind of what's the, I actually don't know what the law is regarding that. Is there a rule that says I can't be? Sorry about that. That's fair. When it comes to noise in the county, I don't know what the law is directly, so I was kind of curious if you might, which is, we have a lot, so.
Yeah, so Whatcom County Deputy Executive Tyler Schroeder, there are very limited Whatcom County ordinances for noise regulations. There are the WACs or the Washington Administrative Codes, the Washington state laws that outline industrial noise or industry noise regulations. But my understanding is Whatcom County ourselves do not have very many ordinances limiting noise associated with it. There more than likely would be regulated through the sheriff's office if there was offenses, but I do not know from personal knowledge code in regards to noise violations. I could look that up, yep.
Oh, here
I
comes
should have asked
our
the attorney instead.
our legal
Sorry about that,
person.
Tyler.
There is a code. We had somebody bring something into the office, and I looked it up, and I was just going to try to find it on my phone. It's pretty,
General.
Yeah, pretty general, and I think it is very difficult to enforce. So I don't think I don't recall it ever being used.
So if there's a chance to look it up, and after the public hearing session, we can give a little bit more background to it.
There was one other email in regards to that we got, that something about Washington state law and how the firearms are specifically excluded from wax. Well, noise for firearms, not firearms in general, but noise caused by firearms can't be considered kind of deal.
That probably is true. We, as a county, we have very limited authority to regulate the use of firearms. And the authority that you are being asked to exercise here is that limited authority to prohibit shooting in areas where either people, domestic animals, or property are threatened. So we're not talking about noise when you're doing a no shooting zone.
So that rule wouldn't, if we had a rule in regards to that, would the state code kind of supersede that?
Yeah, we're preempted on most firearms. It's very clear in Washington state law that we are preempted on. We can't do anything unless it's specifically mentioned in state law. And noise is not one of those things that we're allowed to regulate when it comes to firearms.
So is that something that we, if I hear you correctly, that's something that we can't take into account in our consideration, or?
That isn't what this is about. This is about a threat to public safety, basically.
You were talking about exemptions. The Whatcom County Code 9.32, which is the code that relates to no shooting zones, does have an exemption for discharge of firearms by law enforcement. So I'm not sure, law enforcement officers, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Oh, it was a state one.
But there is an exemption in our local code to that effect.
Mr. Dolan.
I'm still looking forward to the public comments on this, but I think the volume of Mr. Byrd's questions, other people's questions, illustrate that this is not ripe for any decisions tonight and should have been in a committee or should. I'm not sure why we're.
I think that's totally fair.
Just tipping my hat in terms
Point
of.
well received. Thank you.
Yeah. Somebody might stand up and answer your questions.
I know I did.
Well, I mean, I have a ton of questions, but it's also, I mean, if we're starting with council members from Blaine, so.
Okay. Well, let's
They
hear
are
from the
the,
public.
they are the appellant or for the sale or the applicant. Further comments from staff? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing.
Council members.
Oh, sorry,
I was
Mr.
going to
Seaver,
just
sorry,
remind
Mr.
that a couple of years ago, we had berry farmers issue because they have those propane guns to avoid birds coming and eating their berries. And I think that thing came up here too.
Yeah,
That was
that
the
was a
noise
noise
issue.
issue.
I just wanted
That's
to
not the
remind
same thing at
the
all,
council
yeah.
that this did come up, the noise issue to that respect, and it was about the shot, different shot.
Okay, so with that, we the first 6 people, and I'd ask that people line up behind both podiums and be ready to start speaking after the person at the other podium has finished. Each person will be given 3 minutes. At 2.5 minutes, the clerk will give you a reminder that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your comments. The first 6 people I have on the list are John Arabito, Jerry Hayes, Mary Lou Stewart, Jennifer Plummer, or I think it's Plummer, and Richard Holt, and then Paul Johnson. Yes, I did.
Got you. Yeah, just line up. Jennifer, you said you already spoke?
I'll pass them out for you.
This is on the shot show.
Let them
Barry will
just pass
it out.
it
Here,
out.
we'll just give it to us and start. There we go. And you're John? John's going first?
Vito, I was at the top of page 2,
Yep.
so if somebody
Oh,
else
we got
on
it.
page 1.
Whatever, the 6
there was a
people.
bunch-
Just-
Everybody's going to get a chance to talk. so
Somebody's at the
go
top of
ahead.
some page.
May it please the council, my name's John Arabito. I'm an officer with the Washington Waterfowl Association. We're a group in Washington State that concentrates on waterfowl conservation and hunting issues. I'm also a retired attorney, so I want to give you the citations for the law as I see it, and you can run them by your county attorney. RCW 9.41.290 is the statute that specifically states that the state of Washington fully occupies and preempts the entire field of firearms. So any municipality or county can do no more than what's allowed by the state. RCW 9.41.300, subsection 2, is the portion of the statute that this lady was talking about, that you can only regulate shooting where there is a reasonable likelihood that humans, domestic animals, or property will be jeopardized.
This is-
WDFW,
Just one quick thing. This is, and don't count as time for me asking this question, I'm just confused. We just got this, that's not on this.
So that's one of the next speakers.
Oh, okay, I thought he was
Yeah,
handing them out for you.
That's not my material, thank you.
Sorry.
Will you repeat that code number?
Pardon me? Yeah, the first one I gave you was RCW 941-290. And the one I'm talking about now is 941-300, subsection 2. And I think the WDFW Officer Valentine spoke that in his 16 years, he's never had a verified complaint of a safety issue. And that's what this statute 941-300 deals with, where there is a reasonable likelihood that humans, domestic animals, or property will be jeopardized. The officer said he's not had a verified complaint on a safety issue. The third citation I want to give you, and I I appreciate the residents who don't like being waken up at 5 in the morning. But the shooting times are published in the waterfowl regulations. And as the WDF officer Valentine said, they change week to week to week. And as we get later in the year, the time moves back. But the earliest time is 6 o'clock in the morning. So if somebody's shooting at 5, that's a violation of the law. The game warden can go out there and cite them for shooting before hunting hours. If somebody trespasses on their property or in the city of Blaine, that's a violation of the law.
30 seconds,
Somebody
please.
can go out and cite them for the trespassing. But Washington Administrative Code 173-60-50, subsection 3, subsection J as in John, says that noise from the discharge of firearms is specifically exempt as a justification for a no shooting ban.
Time.
So while the bulk of the complaints that I heard at the beginning of the hearing were noise complaints, they're specifically exempt under Washington law.
Can the WAC code that you just, the numbers again?
WAC 173, 60-50, subsection 3, subsection small j as in John.
Thanks.
That's all I have is the legal background. There'll be other people that can more accurately speak as to hunting at the local area, unless you have questions.
Yeah, when you said that they move back, do you mean that they get earlier, like 6 to 5:30 to 5, or that they get
No, they
like
go
6 to 6?
later as you get less and less daylight. The regulation used to be that you couldn't shoot, shooting hours didn't begin until a half hour before sunrise and a half hour after sunset. But those became too ambiguous and nebulous to enforce, and so they went to a system that they set out specific times, and as we get less and less daylight through the winter, those times vary week by week by week, and it's all set forth in the waterfowl regulations that are published by the state.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I got no questions. Thank you.
I don't think.
My name's Jerry Hayes. I'm a resident at Semiahmoo. And the reason I moved here is for peace and quiet. And to be in a shooting zone in the fall doesn't make a bunch of sense to me. When you can go to Costco and you can go and buy a chicken for $4.50, why the heck get up at 6 in the morning when it's cold and rainy and go and fire a shotgun? Now, as one of the council members said, is that Drayton Harbor is water, and water, in particular in water, sound carries. And somebody shoots a shotgun at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm woken up. And to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing is that we're on a fly zone, migratory fly zone, and I've kept a boat here since 1981, so figure out how many years that is. And the beautiful ducks and geese that we see coming through here is a wonderful thing to see, and there's few parts in the world that you can experience that. And you get some guy with a shotgun getting up at 6 in the morning, firing this thing off. I can't see really any sense. You know, what we try to do in life is do sensible things, but that didn't make any sense to me. That's the only thing I had to say here.
Okay. All right. And then, sorry, this one was correct?
I'm Rick Holt. I'm the current president of the Washington Waterfowl Association. I hope you're enjoying your dais and all this. I did all this finish work in here in 1993, so I'm standing here kind of proud, so. It looks, yeah, I heard they had to cut the days down.
I need
Yeah.
to talk to you about some of this.
Well, you got to call my contractor, and I'm retired and I don't care anymore. So, we're a grassroots nonprofit corporation that was founded in 1945 by a group of individuals that had seen that waterfowling was going to have some trouble as far as losing land and, I don't know how to put it, just come under scrutiny. So we are dedicated to the preservation, conservation, protection, and promotion of waterfowl habitat, and waterfowl hunting within the state of Washington. We teach people about waterfowl conservation, sportsmanship, hunter safety, and waterfowl hunting. We also study, advise, recommend, and advocate for the enactment of legislation in the interest of waterfowl habitat, and waterfowl hunting. We were also the first to promote the Washington State Duck Stamp and Print Program to the 1985 legislature to fund waterfowl conservation projects within Washington State. Since 2012, when the legislature directed the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to shut down the artwork program, WWA stepped up and produced and printed both the Washington State Duck Stamp and the Washington State Duck Stamp Print. The sales proceeds from these sales have contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to waterfowl conservation within the state of Washington since 1985, the first year of the Washington Duck Stamp. To begin with, let's call this proposed no shooting zone what it really is. It is a proposed no ordinance zone, no noise ordinance zone, plain and simple. I've got emails and I've talked with Officer Valentine that there has never been any safety issues concerning Drayton Harbor. Not one safety violation, no
30 seconds, please.
No property damage, no shot raining down on homes, no broken windows, no nothing, just noise. The email goes on to state that the Washington Department of Fish and Game, the Hunters Heritage Council, and the Washingtonians for Wildlife Conservation do not support this no shooting zone. In conclusion, this is a waste of taxpayer money to support this. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, could you restate your name?
Pardon?
Restate your name?
Richard Holt.
Right, and I just want to say.
You
I
had
think-
mentioned, you said his name.
Okay, but I didn't hear it, so I just wanted to compliment you on your craftsmanship up here.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
it'll be here for another 100
I'm
years.
proud, man. This looks great, so.
Thank you, we use it every day.
Words, 'cause-
No, you won't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Lou Seward had already spoken, correct? So,
Craftsmanship?
Mary Lou Stewart, you already? Yeah, oh, sorry, okay. And then I've got Paul Johnson, Linda Marshall, Patrick Ellisey, and Matthew Groggins.
Thank you, council members, for hearing me. I'm Paul Johnson, 4618 Hall Road in the county. I live in the Harbor Shores subdivision, which is one of the many new subdivisions that you know have been growing there. And I appreciate hunters have been hunting on Drayton Harbor responsibly for many years. And should you pass a shooting ban, that would be a loss to them, and I would hope they're able to find alternatives to that. But the bottom line is Drayton Harbor is no longer a rural or even a semi-rural area. There has been an explosion of development on both sides of the harbor, as you are well aware, and it's really changed things. And I think that the noise issue is one issue, but there's another one that hasn't been brought up as well, and that is a human and community use issue. I'll give you an example. In my some years living there, I've seen more people get kayaks and have kayaks and go kayaking out in Drayton Harbor and go out in other small watercraft. Moreover, the distribution over the time of the year when people are using Drayton Harbor for things like kayaking is extending every year. It's going later into the fall. It's happening earlier in the spring. I've seen people kayaking out there in the winter during shooting season. It happens. And we're going to see more of that as more people come to that area. There's also people who just like to go down to the shore, more people every year, to have a quiet cup of coffee, meditate, chill out. There's young people who I see frequently go down to the shore to rock hunt, hang out. I understand that most of the shooting down there is responsible, and there's probably no fear or safety risk that we've known of so far. But the bottom line is, you're not going to go kayaking when there's shooting happening. Your ability to enjoy Drayton Harbor is reduced when there's shooting. And I would urge you to reassess the drastic changes that have happened around Drayton Harbor and to recognize that this no longer is just, it's not a suitable place anymore for there to be shooting. Now, the safety issue, very happy to hear these reports that there never has been a safety issue, but you have to be honest with yourselves and know you may confront a safety issue
30
just
seconds,
as the
please.
numbers change over time. So I hope you would support no shooting on Drayton Harbor for all of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Linda Marshall, and I live on Seaside Drive near Drayton Harbor in the city of Blaine, and I'm speaking in support of the no shooting ban. I can't understand how shooting in urban areas go very safely together, and I read the Whatcom County 20-year comprehensive plan, and part of that area is designated as an urban growth area. So this has long been expected and anticipated, and I would have hoped planning for no shooting in a growth urban area would have been anticipated and planned for already. I don't think it should be up to citizens on a neighborhood by neighborhood area to have to come in front of the council to tell you that it doesn't feel safe to have hunting going on almost in your backyard. I think those who oppose the establishment of a no-shoot zone may not be aware of this mandated state growth that's part of the plan. I see on the Whatcom County hunt map that there are multiple migratory bird hunting areas in the area, and Drayton Harbor is not the only option for recreational hunters. I look forward to you making the decision to approve the Drayton Harbor no-shoot zone, and I thank you for listening to us. Thanks.
You're going to have Patrick Allsey, Matthew Groggins.
There's Patrick, there's Matthew.
Right.
Matthew Goggins, City of Bellingham. No comment because I signed up for the wrong hearing, but I do like the days. Very nice.
Patrick, do you set up the right one?
We always have fun, don't we, Patrick?
Well, I always like to have fun, and I was going to have fun on this, but you guys are working really hard, and people are giving your input, and I thought, gee, maybe I should just say nothing.
That's never going to happen.
And,
I didn't mean to laugh.
as I understand, in the city of Blaine is a no-shoot zone. So they're talking about areas outside the city, okay? Not in urban areas. Now, Birch Bay is all urban. People can shoot there, obviously. With the new golf cart regulation, I can predict that guys will be going up and down Birch Bay Drive with their guns. They won't be loaded, though, but with their guns to get out to go hunting. Good luck with all this.
Well, that was interesting.
I had into golf carts.
All right. So apparently the suggestion is no hunting from golf carts.
Different issue.
I don't know, I kind of like that
All
idea.
right, back to, so is there anybody else who wishes to come forward and speak at the open public session on this particular ordinance? If so,
Those are the
please
names.
line up at on both podiums. Yes.
Of course, somebody said two pages.
No, it's for a different thing.
Okay.
Far away.
Hi, Chairperson and members of the council. Thanks very much for having this venue for us to discuss this with you. I'm Andrew Schooler of Dearborn Avenue, and I'm representing the Whatcom County residential area which is south of Dakota Creek. Dakota Creek is where the Blaine city boundary is, with Blaine Road in the east, Drayton Harbor in the west, and on the south side is the residences on Hall Road and Bay Circle. Now, 2 decades ago, there were probably about 10 houses in this area. Now we're approaching 70 houses, 70. And most have been built in the last 10 years. So Blaine's city development has also increased on the north side of Dakota Creek, and there are a lot more houses that will be going up there, also bordering Drayton Harbor. So this is no longer a rural area. Our residential community has recently lodged a petition signed by our members of the community. This is a copy of it. The original is with the county right now. And our request for a no-shoot zone is in process. And that is for our area. And we are Whatcom County property taxpayers. We are your constituents. We are actual residents of Drayton Harbor area and not out-of-county or out-of-state online petitioners. Drayton Harbor is a growing recreational area for kayaking, canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding, birdwatching, fishing, walking, and very importantly, children playing at all times of the year. This council knows of its plans for development all around Drayton Harbor. You know what you're planning for the development of Whatcom County. The Vancouver to Seattle corridor will continue to see rapid growth, and we are in that corridor. There is nobody who can guarantee no shooting accidents, as the opponents to this no shooting zone motion claim, from years past when it was largely a rural area. The fact that people hear shooting at 5 o'clock in the morning is evident of the fact that there are people who don't abide by the rules. The fact that I had somebody in front of my house a couple of 100 yards from my house shooting shows that they're not abiding by the laws.
30 seconds, please.
I don't know what guns they're using. I really don't. I'm not an expert at that. I know what kind of gun I have, but it's nothing that I can see that they're using. So I'm at a disadvantage as far as that's concerned. So this is primarily a no longer a rural area, and none of us really want to volunteer ourselves, our children, our pets, or anybody to be the first casualty of an unmanaged or an unfortunate shooting accident. So we look to this council to plan for the future.
Time.
We look to this council to help with the protection of life and property of your Whatcom County taxpayers. And we are in support of this no shooting zone amendment to the shooting zone code 9.32. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Brown and the council members. My name is Frank Bob. I am a member of the Lummi Nation. I'm a lifelong member of the Whatcom County, as was my parents, as was their parents, as was their parents, as was their parents, as were their parents, and as were their parents, and as were their parents. In other words, since time immemorial, my family has been here in Whatcom County. And over those years, we have always hunted the wildlife, the waterfowl, the salmon, the fish. They were all a staple food source for our people. There's no shooting ban. It's just for no noise zone. Pretty soon it's going to be illegal to honk your horn at the bicyclists. I strongly oppose this. And as a natural resources policy representative, I'm in charge of establishing the rules and regulations for tribal hunters. And it's strictly written in our regulations that there's no hunting half hour before sunrise and a half hour before dusk. That is the hunting times throughout the year. So if somebody's out there hunting at 5 o'clock in the morning, I don't know what they're shooting at, because this time of year it's dark at 5 o'clock in the morning. So if they're out there shooting, they should be calling up the law, the enforcement officers, to get them down there to see what they're shooting at. That's not what the hunters do. I come from a family of hunters. I'm a survivor of the village of the Semiahmoo. We hunted out there at that spit. My people has hunted out that spit. And I strongly urge you folks to really consider this and to acknowledge the statement that our tribal chairman has sent you last week. And I really sincerely hope
30
that
seconds,
you
please.
folks come out and sit down and talk with us, because this is indeed an infringement of our tribal right of the tribal treaty, a treaty that is protected by the Constitution of the United States. Thank you for allowing me this much of your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Barry. Quick point of order. The mayor of Blaine said something about calls going on and on as far as violations. The Blaine Police Department's quoted in the Northern Light from July 18, 2019 is saying, this is Blaine Police Sergeant Michael Munden, every year we receive maybe half a dozen inquiries. It's not on and on and on. Now, again, my name is Matt Barry. I grew up in Blaine and have been hunting ducks in the area for 8 years. I'm a member of Ducks Unlimited and treasurer for the Whatcom chapter of the Washington Waterfowl Association. I wrote the change.org petition in opposition to the no shooting zone that was delivered to your office yesterday morning. The petition reads as follows. We, the undersigned, demand that the Whatcom County Council reject the proposed ordinance ending all hunting on Drayton Harbor. The citizen petition that began this effort is flawed and based on ignorance and anti-hunting sentiment rather than fact. There have been no incidents of injury or property damage to neighbors, as the rules currently in place are adequate and respected by all who hunt there. Legal hunting boundaries are easily accessible on the Whatcom County website, Whatcom County Assessor, and numerous hunting boundary services such as Onyx Maps. Additionally, firearm noise in the course of hunting is protected by an exemption to the maximum permissible environmental noise levels in WAC 173-60-050. Now, all signers of this petition acknowledge pre-existing boundaries and rules regarding safe distances from homes. Furthermore, we pledge to continue to hunt in a safe manner while showing respect to all nearby property owners. A few complaints to the police per year from uninformed residents do not justify ending forever the rich tradition of waterfowl hunting that has occurred since the days of the Coast Salish, end quote. In the past 2 weeks, this petition has gathered 1,100 signatures, 483 shares, and 90 comments. Like Mr. Scolaire noted, not all of the signers are from Whatcom County, but most of them are, about 500, 600 of them. However, there are folks from all over the state that care about preserving this unique and valuable sea duck hunting opportunity as well. This issue is larger than just the folks who live on the bay there, and we've been hunting it a lot longer than they've lived there. Again, Mr. Scolaire, he's got a San Francisco phone number. He just moved here. Perhaps the real problem is that the non-hunter residents in the area do not understand the history of hunting in Drayton Harbor, hunting methods, safe practices, waterfowl conservation, and the existing rules and laws that make hunting perfectly safe here, as evidenced by no problem so far. Our chapter of the Washington Waterfowl Association would be happy to educate them via a mailer, open house, discussion, roundtable, Q&A. Just talk to us. They never talk to us. They never ask what we're doing, if it's legal. They don't seem to know the rules. So I think we can get along and show tolerance, respect to one another if we just have a dialogue at the very least. But on behalf of myself and over 1,000 other hunters, please vote no on this ordinance. Thank you for your consideration. And I'll just apologize for the crying baby. He is passionate. He wants to hunt there with his dad one day. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I have that Northern Light?
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, would you give it to the clerk, because I like.
I'll give it to her afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I
make sure,
promise.
yeah, because I want to see it too.
Thank you.
Chair Brown, members of the committee, thank you very much. We haven't met face-to-face yet, but my name is Tino Villaluz. I come here representing the Swinomish Indian tribal community. I would also like to state our staunch opposition to this. We too have been here since time immemorial, and our roots prior to the concentration camp era that your government recognizes as reservations go right back to this area too. So your chair has so politely disregarded our Constitution of the United States of America in Article 6, Paragraph 2, the Supremacy Clause, in addition to what the lawyer pointed out, where the precedence is not there. I'm a wildlife manager. Public health and safety is at the forefront of all of our agendas. Manufactured threats are not. Disrespect to the treaty is taken very personal, and I mean, it hurts deep when it came from you, Mr. Brown. But I'm here for solutions. I'm here to work with you. I've asked for engagement. I've asked for engagement at many levels, which has not happened. I'm willing to work with the Department of Natural Resources to get well-defined boundaries, enforceable boundaries, to get an easement, to put markers in that bay. You've heard of death by 1,000 cuts. That's what we're experiencing. Urban growth? Seriously? I mean, these wounds are deep. And if you read a little bit about historic trauma, you'll see why I'm so passionate about what I represent. Chairman Brown asked, was I ready to come up in front of the council and represent consumptive use, even with today's society and the prevalence of gun violence? We're not gun violence. One other thing I'd like to point out about public health and safety is if you force us, so one thing unique about Drayton Harbor is we're allowed to hunt the sea ducks. That's where the sea ducks congregate. And those sea ducks are very important to us in ceremonial uses. That's why I'm up here, and that's why I'm speaking to you today. If you put us out into the bay, you know what, Chairman Brown, I've buried family members from that bay. That bay is a very dangerous place. Since a child, I've been a commercial fisherman, a commercial crabber, and been on that bay. I know the risks. You want to talk about a public safety risk, you push us all out into the bay to try to harvest our sea ducks. You say I can go somewhere else?
30 seconds, please.
Just please, like I said, I come to this table with solutions. I would love to work with you guys, to work with the Department of Natural Resources, to work with the City of Blaine. I had extensive conversation with the City Manager, Jones. I asked for staff reports, because when I make decisions, it has to be represented. Like I said, public health and safety, forefront, absolutely. I will not argue that, even with urban growth and all of the losses and how I manage progress by limiting losses to my life. And I mean, when I say my life, this is my life. Treaty resources are my life. Consumptive use of natural resources is, like my relative from Lummi said, it's the air we breathe. So you take those away from me, you can kill me right now. It's literally that serious.
If I didn't call you back, I apologize. I don't know if I remember getting a call, but could you leave your phone number?
Absolutely.
I would definitely like to talk to you.
Mr. Byrd.
Did I hear you right? Is the tribe, or is it a different organization that's willing to kind of help place markers out there or identify those boundaries? Or
so if we're going to get boundaries, no, because enforcement was an issue that I heard reiterated repeatedly. I will work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and so all aquatic leases or easements go through the Department of Natural Resources. So if we're going to place a buoy or a marker to better define a line where the urban growth area meets the county property, we'll have to go through those channels. And I'm more than willing to entertain that type of situation so that you don't have the City of Blaine coming in and saying that, you know, it's unenforceable because it's an ambiguous zone.
you know if that's been done or used anywhere else in
I don't know. No, I just know that, like, I'm sensitive and recognize the interface between those two areas, and I also deal with the enforcement side on a lot of levels. So when things aren't enforceable, they can become very ambiguous and problematic. So it's something we don't want. As the consumptive users, we don't want that problem. So we want to do our due diligence to create that finite boundary.
The animal you were hunting, is that a bird or?
Which one?
Would you?
Sea duck.
The sea duck?
Sea duck, yeah. Oh, so we call them black ducks, yeah. They're just, and I mean, it's with a shotgun. It's, yeah,
I
sea
wasn't sure if
ducks.
it was like a gooey duck.
No,
it's
no,
like
sea ducks.
yeah.
So-
So, yeah, I just
I
wanted
mean-
to clarify, because I hadn't heard of it before, but okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dolan?
We can get further confirmation on this, but I don't think there's anything the city of Blaine or Whatcom County can do that says anything about the hunting rights of Point Elliott signature treaty tribes. That's just off the table for the city and for the county. Now, I'll return to that point.
Saying that if we pass this, that wouldn't affect the tribal rights?
I don't think we should even be
I said
talking
I'll
about
return to
that
that, but
right now. I
mean,
think we should let everybody speak.
Absolutely. And I make myself available for offline conversation individually on, and whether, if you want me to bring counsel, I can bring counsel. We're represented. I would rather deal with it on a staff, on, like I said, a solution-based conversation. I'll make myself available for extensive conversation. Absolutely. And one thing, other thing I might want to add is, as a wildlife manager, I register all my hours. So waterfowl is an international resource, all the way up into Russia. But we have a North American treaty where we signed a treaty with Canada and Mexico and manage our flyways. We register all of our hours, our take, everything with it. Even as a tribe, I register that with, it's printed in the Code of Federal Regulations annually. So these hour claims are, they're not, I don't want to be disrespectful, but
They're
very
legitimate.
unlikely. And the federal game agents, that's their number one citation is hours. They do not mess around with that. So, and waterfowlers know that. You know, we know that. So that's just something else I wanted to do.
Thank you for testifying.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Chairman Brown, members of the council, my name is Pete Adams. I'm a lifelong resident of Whatcom County. I live on the Smith Road. I'm a fifth-generation hunter in the state, fifth-generation duck hunter in the state of Washington. Some of my best memories growing up were hunting sea ducks in the harbor with my uncle. And it's something I look back on with great joy, and it's a passion I've learned from my dad and my uncles, and my brothers. And I bring my friends to hunt ducks as well, and I'm very strict to teach them about safe shooting principles, and as is the state, training in order to buy a license. But because some of my best memories growing up were hunting sea ducks with my uncles, I don't want that to be taken away from my children, should I have any. And because of that, I ask you to please do not vote, do not approve this legislation. Also, in reference to another man's point tonight, he doesn't understand why I live the lifestyle I do. I can't afford to buy a $4 chicken at Costco. I'm just saying, I can't afford that. Hunting is how I provide for myself, how I help provide for my family. And approving this no shooting zone on Drayton Harbor would be a direct attack on my ability to do so. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
I'm Randall Miller, and I live just south of Drayton Harbor in Drayton Creek there, and it's a very populated area. My background's in facility engineering. I think in numbers a lot, and I don't think there's a lot in there except for an existing farm. We've got a neighborhood that goes back to the 60s, and I don't think there's a lot in there bigger than a quarter acre. It's pretty dense. Most houses are like 5 feet off the property line, side to side. So there's not a lot that looks different from where we live other than sidewalks, and you cross the creek and you're in Blaine. It's there. I mean, for a long time there was just 4 houses in the neighborhood, but it has really grown. I've been here 3.5 years, and I know of 1 lot left in the neighborhood. So it's a very dense area, and I was surprised, but I think some of you were too, that Blaine hasn't been allowed to expand the city. And if you, the map of Blaine, Birch Bay, if you look at the city of Blaine, it's just all over the place. It's not a rectangle or anything. It's hard to tell where it starts and stops.
if you overlaid, I think, what would be current shooting restrictions onto a map, I think there'd be large swaths that would just be off the table of the land there that you could, you know, how close you could hunt to the houses. I think that would be a governing regulation. I've got a background in hunting and fishing, nothing against it, but it's just common sense that either, you know, when you've got urban density, the houses are that close, that there should be some allowance made to give the folks an opportunity to decide if they want that close by, and it not have to be on a house by house where you call, okay, what's the radius you've got to be away from the house before someone shoots? You know, if you just went out there and put signs everywhere now where it's illegal to shoot, that would be a help. And if there was a relief to whether or not, you know, the heavily dense areas could either declare we're fine with it or we want to be annexed. So I'd just like to ask you to think in those terms, if you would, when you discuss it. Appreciate your time.
My name is Lyle Galloway. I live on the Aldridge Road, North Bellingham, Washington. I am the acting president for the Whatcom County chapter for the Washington Waterfowl Association. I am speaking in behalf of the 53 members we have here in Whatcom County's chapter. We are opposed to the shooting restriction in Drayton Harbor. All waterfowl hunters, as well as big game hunters, are required by law to know where their legal boundaries are before they go hunting. That's what sportsmen do. By the way, I should include in here too is that myself, as well as there's other multiple men in this room that are hunter education instructors for Whatcom County. Thank you guys for showing up. We are here to teach. We're here to educate. That's why we do this, and we're all volunteers. There's already a no hunting restriction from mean high tide in Drayton Harbor, as shown as the map that I've seen here in the room, if this map is correct. This forces migratory waterfowl hunting to be in a boat at least 200 yards from mean high tide. Drayton Harbor is mainly a quality sea duck hunt for specific species, as well as seasonal hunting sites. It is a seasonal hunting site, and when the migratory waterfowl hunting takes place for sea ducks, it's probably not even going to happen for another month or 2 months, as well the migratory waterfowl hunting opens this coming Saturday. Trust me, nobody shoots at 5 o'clock in the morning if they're a sportsman. In this point, the noise factor is a fallacy in Drayton Harbor area because hunting is by boat. That's going to be at least 1,000 yards from any road or home or from any beach. I sent a little piece of paper to everybody that shows a picture of some shotgun shells. The shotgun shells that we use are explicitly steel, not lead. The lead thing's a fallacy as far as what we have to use for migratory waterfowl hunting. You could ask Dr. Officer Ryan Valentine what the cost is if somebody gets caught shooting lead when you're migratory waterfowl hunting. It's not a cheap one. When you're going to set up decoys and you're going to be in the middle of Drayton Harbor, you're at least 2,000 yards from any of the roads, houses of any sort. I've been out there many times. I grew up in Birch Bay. I've been hunting migratory waterfowl in Birch Bay off and on throughout my lifetime since the early 70s. I lived on the Blaine Road as I grew up through high school. I know the area very well. One of the reasons why I never spent time to hunt migratory waterfowl in Drayton Harbor.
30 seconds, please.
There is not sand or rock on those beaches. It's a mud flat. It's nothing but gooey, nasty mud flats. People don't hunt that from the beach. They have to hunt it from boats. Otherwise, you're going to drag all your mud and your goo back into your boat. It's just a mess. Furthermore, the WAC 173-60-50-3-J states the discharge of firearms is specifically exempt as justification for a no shooting ban. Good luck on your November ballots. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Could you leave your paperwork too?
By the way, I sent this to you guys by mail.
Okay.
You should have got it on mail either Friday or Saturday.
Yeah,
okay?
in a envelope. Big
yes,
envelope.
It was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Turner, and I actually live in Skagit County, but I heard about this shutdown at Drayton and thought it was worthwhile to come up here and say I'm vehemently against it. I've lived on the East Coast, hunted there, the Gulf Coast, and now I've been out here in Skagit for 17 years. and duck hunted all across those places. And all those places that I've hunted over the years, beautiful, pristine marshland. Then one day a house goes up. And then within a year and a half, there's a subdivision there. And then people are saying, no more hunting. And what does the councils do in those towns? A lot of them have shut it down. So as the gentleman from the First Nations in that mentioned, their ancestors have been here for years and years as part of their culture, part of their heritage. I look at it as part of my heritage too. And I'm just here for 17 years. You know, I'd like to see it continue and move on because it's an area that a lot of people can use, paddle boarders, kayakers and all that. You shut it down, we're now discriminating against a certain set of users. And I don't think that's right. And the other thing is, if you shut it down, which one's next? You mentioned there's all these other areas around here, but which one's next? Because that's what's going to happen. Housing development will go up, and we're going to start talking about shutting that one down too. You know, I just hate to see people that like to use this stuff get cut out of it. Everybody gets there for everybody, and everybody can use it, and everybody's got a chance to. Why is this one group being discriminated against? Duck hunting's been culturally and heritagely throughout the United States ever since the first people came over here, and probably long before that, the originals. So I'm against it. I hope you all are too. Thank you.
Okay. If there's anybody else who wishes to speak after these two gentlemen, please line up.
Evening. My name is Anthony Giebel. I'm a resident in the Harbor Shores neighborhood in Blaine. I'm a member of the Washington Waterfowl Association and a volunteer for the Bellingham Ducks Unlimited chapter. As a neighbor to the shores of Drayton Harbor, the beauty and the sounds have pulled at my heartstrings. I've heard the screech of a bald eagle from my home office and seen the solitary loon diving for small fish while in my kayak. It is a special place. According to a recent NPR article from this September, which looked at the North American breeding bird survey and the Audubon Christmas bird count, it stated that in the last half century, North America has lost around 3 billion birds. Waterfowl, however, have increased. The article states, quote, "The numbers of ducks and geese are larger than they've ever been, and that's not an accident. It's because hunters who primarily want to see healthy populations of waterfowl for recreational hunting have raised their voices." In another survey done by the Audubon Society, conducted throughout one winter in Drayton Harbor, it showed a total of more than 15,000 birds in the area. The populations are thriving for birders and hunters alike. I am a hunter, I am a lover of waterfowl, and I am passionate about keeping this magical place sacred for all to enjoy and experience. Hunting is conservation and management. Us hunters have conserved and managed the waterfowl by keeping the populations at healthy levels in Drayton Harbor for more than 50 years, and it's working. Hunters take public safety seriously, and the established hunting laws have ensured that there is no safety risk to the neighbors surrounding Drayton Harbor. Let's come together on this and understand that hunting is a part of our past, a part of nature, and it preserves all the beauty Drayton Harbor so generously shares with each and every one of us. Thank you.
Okay. Is this on the issue of the hunting, or is this on something else?
I'm sorry, I thought you said it'd come up if there was something else, or everybody else.
We'll have another chance.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's afterwards.
If you want to talk about a different issue, you'll have another chance a little bit later on. If you want to talk about a different issue, you'll have a chance to do so later on.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm half deaf, so I misunderstood.
Right.
Okay.
Everybody says I speak funny, so you're forgiven.
Good evening, Council. My name is Blair Smith. I live within the Blaine city limits, and I've been a Whatcom County resident for over 30 years. I'm here tonight strongly supporting the City of Blaine Resolution 1765-19 concerning the creation of a no-shooting zone in Drayton Harbor, and that's for a number of reasons. First, under the area of urban growth, I understand that this area had been very rural and a hunting ground for many years. Apparently, at some point, the county and City of Blaine participated in the creation of urban growth areas surrounding Drayton Harbor, and since then, we've had a steady increase in both housing density and population in these areas. I suppose that with so many people moving into and urbanizing the areas surrounding Drayton Harbor, it was inevitable that conflict would eventually occur between homeowners wanting to enjoy the peace and repose of their private property and others wanting to hunt on adjacent public lands. I doubt that anybody sitting up there on the dais, here in the audience, or watching at home can say that they would enjoy being awakened by the sound of gunfire at the crack of dawn for weeks on end from October through January. But that's how it is for us living out there. My wife and I walk the Semiahmoo Spit several days a week, and it is so unpleasant that she doesn't even want to go down there during the hunting season. It negatively impacts our quality of life. Second reason, tourism and visitors. As you know, we're fortunate to have a world-class resort on the Semiahmoo Spit as a neighbor. This business employs a lot of local people and presumably pays a great deal in taxes. It markets itself around bird-watching opportunities of Drayton Harbor and the Spit, and according to their website, they apparently conduct their own bird-watching tours on Saturday. There's a Wings Over the Water birding festival in the spring, and it's considered one of the premier coastal birding sites in Washington. This area brings in more people to enjoy the natural beauty of the area and its wildlife. We also have a county park that also draws local residents to do the same. Again, can anyone sitting up there on the dais, in the audience, or watching at home not see the disconnect and incompatibility of drawing tourists and local residents to an area to experience the wonder and beauty of nature with having people hunting in that same space?
30 seconds, please.
Pollution. My wife and I often clean the beaches of garbage left behind or washed up on the shore. For weeks during and after hunting season, I find spent plastic shotgun shells washing up on both sides of the spit. I often wonder how many we don't see that sink to the bottom, eventually break down, contaminating shellfish, fish, mammals, and eventually all of us. Public safety. Is this a safe activity to conduct around large groups of people living, recreating on nearby boats, kayaks, walking, biking along paths and trails? Some will say it is, but I don't see a lot of enforcement out there, and I don't trust 100% of any group or persons to follow all the laws and rules at every time. Will people be using the right ammunition? Will they be far enough away from shore? We had an incident last year where one group of boats was very close.
Time. It's time, sir.
I'll leave my comments.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. John Sitkin, 1500 Railroad Avenue, Bellingham. I am the attorney for the city of Blaine, and I thank you for taking up the city council's resolution, and we ask for your passage of that eventually. It's been interesting listening to the comments today.
The mic.
Been interesting listening to the comments today, and that people of all sides on this issue recognize it's a resort area, that paddleboarders and sport users on the water use the same areas as people are hunting during the hours of hunting. People recognize this is an urbanized area that we're talking around Drayton Harbor, not historically, but more so recently and will be in the future. So you're going to have more people interface with hunters. So the question is, what is your authority and how do you deal with the risk? And it's an interesting logic that somehow a tragic injury must happen before you would regulate or try to do something to prevent future injuries. But that's not what the law requires. So Karen had used her phone, and I'll use the same statute that Karen was referring to, 941-300. I'll scroll down. You may regulate activities in your jurisdiction related to hunting where there is a reasonable likelihood that people, pets, or property will be in jeopardy. That's the standard that you must meet to defend your ordinance. Is there a reasonable likelihood that people, pets, or property will be jeopardized? So it's prospect. Is there a risk that someone could get hurt with this interface when you have a resort community that's drawing people into the water, where you have small towns that are trying to find an economic viable way to bring people into their community? Birding is a key thing. Bird watching is a key thing. They hit that interface between where the hunters will be and where the waterfowl will be. They are at risk and are at jeopardy. You have increased urbanization, people, pets, small kids playing on beaches, playing in areas where that interface is. They are at risk, they are at jeopardy. Is there a likelihood that there could be an incident? Yes. You have the authority to pass this regulation, and we ask you to do that. There are concerns. City of Blaine's prepared to listen. We'd ask you to put this into committee, and we ask you to leave the record open for additional comments. And I'm open to questions.
But
I'm curious, I worked out there for 10 years just down the road every day, and I never saw anyone in there. And everyone I knew out there, we always thought that was a contaminated area. And the Drayton Harbor, it was always like, we always thought it was contaminated and that you just didn't go there. So we all go to Birch Bay, and that's, for as long as I remember, it's always been the same thing. My question is, does the city have any data that shows what the actual usage is of this area? Like, how many people are actually using this?
So we can tell you how many people go to the resort.
Right.
There is no check-in to use the spit.
Okay.
There's no check-in to walk around Semiahmoo.
Is there any kind of like road?
We don't have a road marker as you drive down. And at times, there may be a road count Public Works may do to check traffic going onto the spit. But there's no ticket. There's no way for us to monitor who comes onto the spit or goes into other portions of outside of Blaine's jurisdiction. And that's the issue. The questions before were about, well, how many reports go to DFW? Well, if it's not in the city, and it's in Drayton Harbor, it's not illegal, there wouldn't be a report. It's kind of,
is there
the question. So we don't have a way to monitor and check. It's not a gated system.
Okay. I'm a little unsure because a couple of people had mentioned it was an urban growth area, but then I thought it wasn't.
There's portions of Drayton Harbor that have been urbanized and allow urban. The city limits, as Mr. Jones was speaking, have been drawn back as part of the county's response to the Growth Hearings Board's order that a number of cities had it restricted. That line over that had been in the urban growth area over Drayton Harbor have been brought back to the city limits around that portion of Drayton Harbor. So it's no longer.
Is there some portion of this area that's not incorporated or is unincorporated?
There are some portions that are in an unincorporated area outside of the city.
Okay.
That are not in urban growth area.
When you're saying this area, Mr. Byrd, do you mean the area in your ordinance that you're looking at, the bounded section?
I feel like I'm frustrating Todd, so I'm going to go ahead.
I mean, again, this is a strange public comment period here, but actually I'm looking at a City of Blaine document. If we want to talk about the UGA and all that, the City of Blaine recommended that their UGA be reduced by 2,600 acres because it had the capacity to accommodate 80 years of urban growth. It was vastly oversized to say that that was the county doing that.
Well,
but again,
is
I
that
think this is.
I remember that.
But I'll return to this is really something we should move on with and talk about getting it in a committee.
Can we put this in committee later then so I can ask more of these questions?
I'm ready to make, but
I'm okay with that.
I
I just expected it to be voted on since it's a public hearing tonight, so I'm okay to put it in committee if we're not voting on it tonight.
No, we're
Councilman
not letting.
Donovan, I'm sorry if you
Point
were.
of order, gentlemen. We are in the middle of the public hearing, so.
I was going to respond to, I thought maybe even a question to me on the growth boundary question, but we can address that offline. No, I know the history and know the boundaries, so I wanted to make sure we were speaking the same and not inaccurately. But thank you.
I'll save my questions for another day. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So, again, if there's anybody else who wishes to speak on this issue, please line up, or we're going to close the public session after these three gentlemen.
My name is Jesse Dwight. I'm not a lawyer or a councilman or anything like that. I'm just a citizen of Whatcom County, specifically of that area. I live in Custer, which not many people know about, but it's over there by Birch Bay and Drayton Harbor and all that. I wake up every morning during hunting season to gunshots also, so I'm one of those people that can say that, and I don't mind it. I hunt to provide for my family. The meat that I harvest every year is not recreation
It is fun to go out and do, but it's not recreation. This is my livelihood. This is what puts food in my kids' mouths. I have gone as far as being a hunter. One of any hunter in here's biggest fear is losing his hunting rights. There is no way any of these men in here are going to do something illegal that would jeopardize them with that man coming down and saying, hey, you ain't hunting no more. I've gone as far as calling Mr. Valentine on his cell phone and asking him questions about, am I allowed to hunt here? What's the laws? What's the rules? I don't think it's a matter of public safety, because any hunter who's gone through his classes and who has the appreciation for wildlife and the outdoors that I do, they're not going to break the rules, because that would jeopardize a huge part. Being a hunter is not just something you do, it's something you are. And as far as public safety goes for it, that is zero question. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Mark Walker, 371 Shallow Shore. Obviously, I was going to be like Samish speaking, but I'm also one of those hunter education teachers, and I have been for the last 6 years. I'm a volunteer for the state of Washington and have been a hunter ed teacher. One of the things that we teach in hunter's ed is that one of the greatest losses to our wildlife is loss of habitat. And you're actually encouraging development. If you have a no shooting zone out there, you're actually encouraging loss of habitat in Drayton Harbor to these sea ducks, which are very important to the tribe, very important to the hunters. The reason there's so many ducks out there is because of habitat. Another issue is that we're conservationists. We spend most of self-taxed ourselves with the Pittman-Robertson Act in 1939. All of our ammo, all our guns, all our camouflage clothing goes to support game reserves. It goes to support the biologists that are controlling regulations on all these ducks. And I just couldn't stand kind of listening to this, because I don't want to see a area that is so important be lost to hunters. And so I'll be back for Lake Sandwich. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
And again, if there's nobody else off this gentleman, we're going to close the public.
Yes, I'm Rodney Vandersijpen. I live in Ferndale. I lived in Blaine for quite a while. I live in Ferndale now. I've been hunting Drayton Harbor for the last 25 years off and on. The city limits line is over a half a mile into the bay. There is no way that there is anybody that's going to hunt out there that's going to affect the city limits other than by sound. There are no safety issues out there at all. I did my homework just like all the other hunters that have to hunt out there do, because it is such an odd place to hunt. You have to know what you're doing to hunt out there. And everybody that I've ever seen hunt out there does it safely. There's no issue. You know, if you have kayakers coming by you, there's no ducks going to come by you to be able to shoot. That'll never be an issue. There'll be nobody walking out where you can shoot because the ducks won't come. People think that everybody you just go out there and they just ball in. No, you have to pay attention and you have to do things right, or you'll never get a shot. So as far as a safety issue, I have never seen anything out there that would ever be a safety issue. I've never seen anybody shoot close to any of the houses. I understand it is a noise issue. It is a noise issue. I live close to Lake Terrell now. There's duck hunting there. I get the same thing they get every day. I understand it. I do it, and I say good for them. You know, that's somebody out there providing some food. So as far as a safety issue in the city of Blaine, I don't think there's any issue. I mean, their city limits line goes so far out, and if they need help and I think the Washington Waterfowl Association would be more than happy to help them put up buoys too. We don't want to be in the city any more than they want us in the city. I mean, we would rather it be easier for us to know where we can hunt. I've been a hunter ed instructor for the last 15 years. I teach all my kids, or whoever comes through the class, is know where you're hunting, because you've got to know where you're hunting, because that's what's going to keep us at. That's the number one complaint is poaching, for trespassing. And, so we've got to know where we're going to hunt. So please don't have this as a no shooting zone. I
30
think it's a
seconds,
safety
please.
zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close the open public session. What's the wish of the council? Mr. Donovan.
I move to return this to committee of the whole and leave open for comment. And if I get a second, I can give you a couple of reasons for that.
Second.
All right, the motion is made by Mr. Donovan to push back to the committee and seconded by Buchanan.
So at least three things, and why we need further discussion on this. I think the biggest one, and this doesn't just apply to council actions, but to city actions, we need to amend it if we're going to do it to acknowledge that it cannot affect sovereign treaty rights to hunting, and we would have to reintroduce this
I
anyway.
think that kind of discussion belongs in committee, because
Second.
otherwise I'm going to start talking about what I want.
So, Ms. Brenner, Mr. Byrd has talked more than anybody up here combined, and you have
Well, I've
not
been
objected at
trying
all.
to-
Yes.
No, you have not objected at all.
did.
Ms. Brenner, Mr. Donovan has the floor.
So that's
Then
the
I'm gonna
first
say
thing. The second thing is, is I think we need to hear from our prosecuting attorney. I mean, I respect the City of Blaine's perspective on this can only be dealt with as a public safety thing. If we're talking about it as a noise thing, what's the issues with that? So I think that's something we need to get more feedback on. And this is a request from the city in an UGA that's outside of the city. I think we need to unpack that more. But the urbanization issue is a big deal out there. But that requires a lot more discussion. I was a bit frustrated earlier that we're having this without having that discussion. So that's my motion.
Ms. Brenner and then myself.
Well, it's my understanding from what was said tonight that some or most of this area is not in a UGA.
Well, we should have maps up and a
Well,
committee
that's a
discussion.
great idea, let's do it, but I feel like if we're going to deal with this as an issue about hunting, I would like to see us talk about hunting with everybody, not, oh, these people can hunt and you can't. One or the other, you either do it or you don't.
That's my motions, we have that discussion.
Yeah, right, okay.
A couple of comments I'd like to make. First off, I think it's appropriate to recognise we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, and also recognise that the development out in Semiahmoo Spit was for time immemorial a burial ground for the particularly the Lummi Nation and I guess the other nations in the area. I recognise and respect the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855, and I recognise both the treaty and the Bolts decisions in terms of the tribe's right to hunt in Drayton Harbour and other areas. And I also want to say I recognise the importance of the wildlife harvests to both their tradition and ceremonies. I'm also very concerned about the public safety and feel duty-bound to give consideration to the request by the Mayor and Police Chief of the City of Blaine. And I've already reached out to the Lummi Nation Tribal Chair, or the Lummi Nation Tribal Business Council Chair, Jay Julius, with a request that we meet to discuss alternative proposals to this issue that can best serve all the parties, and I look forward to a productive conversation with Mr. Julius and with the tribe. And with that, I would also like to support holding this in committee until those discussions have occurred, and in particular, to ensure that we are providing appropriate respect and acknowledgement for the tribal treaty rights in this issue. Mr. Byrd, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah. Todd, I'm sorry about that. I mean,
Well, it's not you, it's Barbara cutting
Yeah,
you off.
I
Instead
just
of cutting-
like-
You should be cutting Tyler off.
I'm not used to
Well, I
it
don't-
being, I'm not used to it being up for public hearing
It was-
and
it
us
was
not
a-
taking a vote
it
and
was-
then
That's
having,
why
so
they
this is,
said
I'm assuming it was my only chance to ask these questions because it would go for a vote.
No.
But I do appreciate that your motion actually to put it in the committee so I can have time to ask these questions because I want to ask more, so thanks.
Ms. Brenner.
Well, since I'm getting blamed for it. You know, I think it's fine, I think it's important to talk to members of the Lummi and the Swinomish tribes who came here, Lummi Nation and Swinomish. And I think he did leave his phone number, right? So I hope, it doesn't sound like anybody got a hold of him before now.
And we have a letter from him.
What?
We have a letter from the Swinomish, too.
We do?
Yeah, they sent a letter.
Okay, huh. Well, I must have missed it. I thought he said he called us or something. Anyway, I have a personal, very strong feeling about the safety that people who do hunting use. And my concern is you've got people who probably aren't hunters and they're maybe shooting off, you know, guns for different reasons. And that really concerns me, because even if we created a no shooting zone, that's not going to take care of that problem at all. And, you know, I got to be careful not to go too much further, but I just think we should treat all hunters, you know, who play by the book the same, and not try to just pull out certain ones of them. I really appreciated that the Lummi Nation and the Swinomish came and talked to us. I was really impressed by both of them. But I think they actually were talking about the whole issue. And that's what impressed me the most. It seemed like it was a very inclusive issue they spoke to. So you guys can talk about, you know, putting a line in the sand and separating them out. But I don't think that's a good idea.
Mr. Byrd.
For that committee meeting, when it gets rescheduled, it'd be really nice to have the same people, the city here, Fish and Wildlife, the sheriff's office. If your chief could come out, that'd be great. I'd love to know more about his statement in the paper as well. But so we have the people here to ask the questions, and we don't have a hearing without the answers. So that'd be great.
Ms. Brenner.
Is there somebody here from the sheriff's office? No. Oh, I thought you said.
No, for the
Okay.
committee meeting, they can come. I don't want to have a committee meeting and then have it just be us talking opinion and no one here with any facts. So.
Yeah, that would be good.
We're asking for the Blaine officer. Is that who you wanted here?
Yeah,
And
because
someone from the sheriff's office.
I'm curious, I mean, in the paper, he says, you know, the half dozen, and she said that there's a lot more, so I'd like to get that straightened out and understand, is it a half dozen, or is it more, and are there calls before 6 a.m., or that are documented, or what? So have the data is what I'm looking for.
Mr. Donovan, I'd just like to request that you, if you're going to make a motion to hold this or send it back to the committee, we need a time frame. Sounds like this is going to be at least 4 weeks, so I think.
That would be fine, as long as, if that's a friendly amendment or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, so 4 weeks from now.
That would give us time to hear from at least the prosecutor and some of these other people.
Right.
Or round up all the people who want to,
Right.
so 4 weeks.
Okay. Any further discussion on Mr. Donovan's motion to hold and send to committee for 4 weeks, in 4 weeks? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you coming out and testifying tonight.
Next item up is,
And you're still here, Patrick.
next item up is AB 2019-452, request authorisation for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and the City of Bellingham for the 2019 Burn Justice Assistance Grants to purchase ballistic resistance vests for a total of $13,391. Gentlemen, if you wish to talk, could you please do so in the podium, in the rotunda?
Here.
Mr.
Nope, the other side.
Ms. Fraser.
I'd say there may be some people who are here for Lake Samish. I just want to, we're not discussing that today.
Yeah, I announced it at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, I don't know if everyone heard that.
So, did I have anybody who wished to speak on this AB 2019-452 about the ballistic vests? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I don't
Move
think
approval.
there wasn't a staff report, I believe.
No, there was stuff in there.
Ms. Brenner moves approval. Do I have a second?
I second.
Mr. Byrd seconds. Discussion.
I got at least 2 hours worth of questions on this.
As long as Barbara cuts you off at an hour, then it's okay.
Let's start.
All right, does anybody wish to add to Mr. Byrd's comments? Seeing none, all in favour of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item up is the open session. During the open session, audience members can speak to the council on any issue not scheduled for public hearing. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and optionally include city of residence. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff shall keep track of time limits and inform speakers when they have 30 seconds left to conclude comments. And you were first.
Hi, my name's Heather Dahlberg. It's my second time coming back. My first time was last month, and I'm a volunteer for many organizations, Homes Now being one of them, and since last month, a lot has hit the news, hasn't it? So I am speaking as a volunteer, not as a person with the organization, and I'm going to be staying there for one night to help out, and I'm just will be on hand. And from what I understand, because there was somebody that I was directly involved in getting into Unity Village, that everything is going really great, and that people are doing really well, and that everything else that might be disturbing in the press, I just don't want that to take the focus off of what the good that's being done and the people that are doing great right now. And I believe a lot of them were able to go to the city council meeting and speak last night. I wasn't able to go to that one, so I thought I would come here and represent them by letting you know that they're doing well. Also, I am, right as soon as I leave here, I'm gonna go to the hospital. A friend of mine's daughter is very sick. And when I went to the hospital last night, the nurse came in and she was just all garbed up, like tremendously. And she said it's because it's colder, faster, and the flu season's going to be longer, and they didn't want to spread anything between the patients. So in saying that, I wanted to let you know, like last year, one of the ways I've discovered Homes Now was through the live streaming and going out on the streets and picking people up and bringing them to the hotel rooms. And that was one time the money was diverted just perfectly. It was saving lives. So I went out there and I did it, and I learned about these tools. You fill this up with hot water, and then you put a whole bunch of hot water into a cooler, and then you run around and make sure they're dry and really tight, and then people who are out on the street can put this between their legs, and it keeps them from shaking too much. And then I had hand warmers, and I had toe warmers, and students from Western Washington University actually went out and got a whole bunch of these for us so that we were able to pass them out. So if we don't have a warming center set up to take them somewhere, I'm not going to have a Jim Peterson spending money giving me a hotel room this time. And last time I went out, I couldn't convince anybody that didn't want to go to the mission was already there. And I'm not speaking badly because we need the mission, obviously.
30 seconds, please.
And I just want you to know that there's a whole bunch of volunteers like me who are willing to jump in again, but we need a place to take the people. And so in the meantime, if there isn't a place, this is my tools. All right? Thanks for your listening. And have a great night, and thank you for all you do. This has been really educational for me too, and I felt like I was on the front line of some really serious issues, so I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Please come forward if you wish to speak.
My name's Eric McHenry from Lake Samish, and no, we're not going to go away. You can tell us, but this is open, so here we are. At the committee meeting today, it seemed like there was some apprehension on making a move on AB 2019-479480. Some of the issues seem to be the enforcement of whether it's 150 feet or 300 feet from shore. And one of the first things I'd like to say is Lake Sandwich has been self-policing for years, ever since I've been there, and I am confident that it's been that way prior to. We have been a community that has asked people to abide by whatever law they may or may not know. I don't know if you guys remember, but originally when we asked for this proposal and this petition, there was conversation in regards to education and notification at the boat launch in regards to an aerial view of where the no-wake zones were. I think that's important as far as trying to let people know, because you guys have inquired about outsiders coming in to the lake as opposed to just the residents that are at the lake. I not only think it's important for the residents of the lake to know exactly what the rules are, but as well the other people coming in. I think the education is very important. The other question that I think we're hanging up on is questions of erosion. The problem I have with the erosion question is, if you look at it, there's 365 days a year. There's maybe 90 days a year that there's recreation going on the lake, and there's not even that many days. And if you factor in how many of those days are these big boats with bigger wakes, it's very minimal. You know, the fact is if you do a study, then you have to try to disseminate what cause is what percentage of the erosion. I think that's going to be a bigger challenge than finding that there's erosion in the first place. There is erosion. There's going to be erosion. There's natural erosion. That's the way it is. But I think that many residents, and you guys keep asking for experts, I think that the people that have lived there for years are a better expert than anybody that you're going to try to hire outside, because I think we all know that we've got 3 of you out there on July 31st, but it's been years since we've seen any of you, okay, inclusive of other residents in the county, because we're so far south. If you're going to do a study on erosion, like I said, you need to rescind the 2019-046, because it's got to be a long-term study to find out anything, if that's truly what you want to find out. I don't think that it's fair that you're asking for all these things to be tacked on to this proposed ordinance, because you never asked for those things and that factoid information from the original ordinance that you passed. It's just not fair.
Time.
Thanks.
Excuse me. My name is Sharon Cody, and I've lived on Lake Samish for 25 years. I enjoy many forms of water recreation, including swimming, paddle boarding, water skiing, canoeing, and kayaking. And I am asking you to please support the proposal AB 2019-479 regarding modification of boating regulations of Lake Samish. AB 2019-479 is aligned with a grassroots proposal to change specific aspects of Whatcom County Ordinance 2019-046, which was passed on June 4th. The current proposal is a transparent community effort providing an opportunity for all residents to understand the issues and make an informed decision. It has overwhelming Lake Samish community support, with more than 400 resident signatures representing approximately 290 Lake Samish households. Initiation of this proposal differs from how Ordinance 2019-046 came about, which was developed by a very small number of people with no outreach to the greater Lake Samish community. The lack of outreach ensured that no opposing views were voiced during the June 4th council meeting when the topic was presented and approved. As a result of extensive community outreach on this proposal, AB 2019-479 provides an effective solution for the concerns raised by residents after the adoption of the Ordinance 2019-046. The unintended consequences of Ordinance 2019-046 is a decrease in boating safety on Lake Samish, as all vessels are now forced into the center of the lake. AB 2019-479, however, is an alternate solution with greater specificity to target those activities generating larger wakes to ensure safety of all residents on docks and shores, as well as the boaters and other watercraft, a solution that retains the 300-foot restriction from shore and docks for wake surfing, wakeboarding, but allows other vessels to revert back to the 150 feet restricted distance. AB 2019-479 provides the same level of safety to residents who expressed concerns about larger wakes. It results in fewer watercraft being pushed to the center of the lake, thereby correcting the unintended decrease in boating safety seen after implementation of Ordinance 2019-046. Whatcom County Public Works is not aware of any study on Lake Samish designed to assess shoreline erosion, either from water level maintained in Lake Samish, hardening of shoreline from bulkheads, boat impact, or any other applicable causative
30
factors.
seconds, please.
Information previously presented to the council from lake residents regarding shoreline erosion was subjective. Without a long-term, well-designed study to determine the impact of boat wake on shoreline erosion, the council's decision on the previous ordinance was ill-informed and based on anecdotal information. In summary, supporting this modified proposal will ensure the original concerns of the residents on Lake Samish that proposed the earlier ordinance will be met. The recreational activities that create bigger wakes will still be restricted within 300 feet of the shore. So I'd just like to encourage the council to revisit this issue, to allow introduction of AB 2019-479 and subsequently add it to the agenda for a public hearing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barry Johnson, I live on Lake Samish and West Lake Samish, and I'm as passionate as they are. There's an enforcement issue. Even if you go back to early spring, last summer or something like that, the thing that was passed this year, if the new one is passed, there's still enforcement problems. I live in that narrow neck, and Eric just talked about that they're self-policing. They are not self-policing. The things I've seen is what caused me to come up with supporting the original proposal. The things that occurred in front of my dock, in front of the bridge, and I'm right by the no-wake area. And this summer I've been in the no-wake area, and they don't police themselves. They come within 10 feet of my dock, and that's not self-policing. Second is I hate to see this become an issue between boaters and non-boaters. My two neighbors are both boaters. One of them is a wake boater, and they are great. They go slowly through the narrow neck, and they go out in the middle part of the lake, and that's where they recreate, they paddle, they tube, they ski, and they wakeboard. Safety is a problem. Mr. Byrd, I wrote to you an email. I did not appreciate your lecture the last time I was here 2 weeks ago. It's impossible for me to prove that there's a need for safety unless I bring in somebody who's maimed or hurt. I'm here being proactive for safety to try and prevent injury. My main concern is that boats get too close to swimmers. I'm not concerned as much about boaters' safety because that's not something that I worry about. I worry about people swimming near my dock and boats coming close to them, kayakers, and I already mentioned people on paddle boards. Laws and rules need to be made due to rational thought. It's interesting listening to the discussion about Drayton Harbor. You could interchange the words hunters with boaters, and it's almost the same exact argument. We need to be using rational thought, not vocal partisanship that some call the majority. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Mr. Ellison.
Oh, come on.
That's several pages of a dialogue that's going on with my neighbors around the C shop. And I thought I'd print it up, bring it in. They're concerned about speeding. They're concerned about, that's their big issue. I heard a car coming down Morrison the other day in the morning, roaring down Morrison, did not stop at the intersection, went right through. So they didn't even pay attention to they did pay attention to the stop sign, they just like to go fast through it. One thing that isn't interesting there is the acceleration of some cars. They go very quick up to, maybe 30 miles an hour and then slow down. So I brought that, just maybe they'll make copies and you can look it over drinking coffee sometime. Thank you.
I got a question, Pat. What about if that's a bad, and I've seen that myself at that intersection, by the way.
What?
People going right through the stop sign. I've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Could BB Warm maybe, I mean, to me, it's a public safety issue. Could BB Warm maybe put that on the agenda and look at it as an issue for the I don't know if they could, but, or some other,
Yeah, that's more drainage.
well, or maybe you guys could put together a request for like that'd be a good place for one of those cameras.
Yeah, well, maybe, I know that the county engineer, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, and he was saying, it's a four-way stops is where they have more accidents. Well,
If they're not doing it.
people just aren't stopping, and they're not taking the sequence approach. First there, if when I stop, I'm looking. If somebody else has stopped there, they're going to go before I do. Sometimes people are just kind to other people, and they wave them through. It throws off the sequences of everybody. So it's not a simple thing. But some of these guys, they just want to show off.
I've seen where people just don't even stop there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that. And I was thinking maybe a camera.
So they'd like to do something about it. So one's talking about doing a petition. I just thought, I'll bring this to you now. Good luck with all this stuff.
Hello, my name is Tim Slesk. I live on West Lake Samish Drive, and I didn't prepare well-written thoughts to come out here tonight and share with everybody, but since I'm here, I want to stand up and share a few thoughts about what my thoughts on Lake Samish. I think the original ordinance that was passed back in June was based on not the will of the people. The overwhelming majority of the residents that live and pay taxes on Lake Samish do not want the no wake zone that was just passed back in June. They want it to go back to the way it was. I think the ordinance that was passed was based on anecdotal evidence. There's no scientifically based evidence showing that, water skiing or recreation on that lake is causing erosion or further, potential harm or injuries to people. I don't know what we're going to ban next. I mean, mountain biking on Galbraith or even swimming. People die from swimming and drowning all the time. I have never witnessed someone being injured or harmed by a boating accident. I've lived out there for a few years now. Most of the year, there's no one even on the lake in a boat recreating, let alone wake surfing, as it's been made to sound, all the time. This has been a terrible year for weather, so it's probably not indicative of most years. But there was maybe 15, 20 days this year where the lake was crowded with wake surfing boats. I think what this ordinance has done is pushed everyone to the middle of the lake, creating maybe more of a hazard as opposed to where it opened it up before for more room for recreating. Again, I just want to end with saying I think that as a tax-paying citizen on Lake Samish, which is a healthy dose of my family's income, this is not the will of the people. We signed a petition. It's at 9-1 in favor of going back to the way it was, which was safe, which was just fine. And the new ordinance that was passed was the will of a very few small minority of people. And I don't feel like any of the rest of us had an opportunity to come to that June 4th meeting because we're busy. We just didn't know about it. And now I feel like I wish that you would respect the will of the people that live and pay taxes on Lake Samish and go back to the way it was. Thanks.
Mark Walker, 371 Shell Shore Road. If someone's shooting at 5 in the morning, they're not a hunter, they're a criminal. And if someone's boating 10 feet away from a dock, they're not a boater, they're a criminal. Nobody should be 10 feet away from a dock. I don't want this thing, in the famous words of Clint Eastwood in Trans Am, get off my lawn. I don't want this thing to turn into a get off my lawn scenario where we just create these huge spaces in front of people's houses because they don't want anybody boating or in their area. There are definitely rules about swimmers and kayakers and paddleboarders. They have to stay within 150 feet. They're not in the same areas as the skiers and the large boats. All this does is brings the ski boats back to 150 feet. The large wake boats are at 300 feet, right where the proponents wanted it, the original proponents. They wanted it at 300 feet. This doesn't change that. And the only other issue that seems to be coming up is erosion. I think it was already said that, the main boating season is only 12 to 13 weekends a year. The rest of the year, erosion is caused by, wind and weather and winter. And so it's not a huge proportion of what's going on. And I think any study on erosion would be quite timely, and it would be very difficult to determine what's going on. There is erosion, but what's causing it? I don't believe it's boats. The boats have been out there for years. If it is the large boats, we've moved them to 300 feet, and the waves are being dissipated. The ski boats have been there forever, and it hasn't changed the erosion patterns that have been going on for as long as there's been ski boats out there. So if erosion wasn't a major issue and wasn't studied before, I'm not sure why it would be a major issue now. Thanks.
I got a question.
Ms. Brennan.
I have a question. I don't know if it was you earlier or somebody, and you just kind of mentioned it, that people aren't out there where the boats are. Is there some restriction on where people can
Yes.
kayak or swim or anything like
They're
that?
supposed to be within 150 feet of the shoreline.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
somebody couldn't, like, because they're really super athletic, swim across the
Well,
lake?
of course, they could, but they should have some protection if they do that.
But it's not, but there's some law about it.
Yeah, they're not supposed to.
Okay.
You're not supposed to be out in the middle of the lake.
accompanied by a boat.
You should be accompanied by a boat if you're out there
Okay.
in the middle of the lake. So that's why you don't ever hear about actual accidents out there, because people usually follow the rules, so.
Hello, my name is Dave Morrow. I've addressed you folks before, and I would like to also speak to the Lake Samish safety zone and so forth. I sent an email out to each of you about a week ago, but I know how very busy you are, so I just thought I would read it for the sake of anyone who hasn't, and take it verbatim that way. So I wish to address the recent petitions to change the 300-foot safety zone along the shoreline of Lake Samish and reduction of the no-wake zone. Throughout the public debate of these issues, I've told those who wish to keep things as they currently are that petitions would not matter. Thus, there was no point in mounting our own counter-effort to that of the power boaters. I did so because petitions amount to little more than popular opinion. And when public safety and protection of property are at issue, as is the case here, popular opinion carries no weight. Allow me to illustrate. The current automobile speed limit along Westlake Samish Drive is 25 miles an hour, and rightly so. Many homes back right up to the shoulder of Westlake Samish Drive. There are children, the elderly, and pets to protect. As well, the personal property is at risk when situated so close to the road. But the speed limit hasn't always been 25 miles an hour. I lived on Westlake Samish Drive 32 years ago. At that time, the speed limit was 35 miles an hour. Now, suppose a group of residents who live along Westlake Samish today came to the Whatcom County Council with a petition signed by an overwhelming majority that complained of delays owing to the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and asked that it be restored to 35. Would you do it? I hope not. Because even when it appears the public is willing to forego its own safety for the sake of some minor benefit or pleasure, it is still the responsibility of public officials to consider the larger picture. The same factual construct applies to the waters of Lake Samish. Over the many years I've lived on the shore of Lake Samish, the number and variety of power boats have increased greatly. It became unsafe for paddlers and swimmers. Docks and shoreline were being damaged at an increasing rate, so a group of residents came to the Whatcom County Council, made them aware of this, and asked that steps be taken to protect public safety and our personal property. You did so, and most of us realized an immediate improvement. But for every action, there's a reaction, and the power boaters complained loudly. The issue has now been muddied with pleas for compromise and arguments that seek to blame dock damage on the docks themselves. Though the power boaters still enjoy approximately 70% of the lake to recreate as they wish, swimmers and paddlers are now safe, and the damage to personal property has been greatly reduced. There is a concerted effort to roll back the 300-foot safety zone and reduce the no-wake zone. Let us be clear, to whatever extent the current protections are diminished in satisfaction of the power boaters' recreation, it is at the expense of public safety and the protection of personal property. Who will be responsible if someone is injured? Who will pay for the damage to personal property? These questions must be answered before any change is made. Thank you.
If there's anybody else who wishes to speak at the open public session, please line up, or we will close the open public session.
Paul Jostens, Lake Samish again. Sorry you guys have to stay here so late. If it were about safety, as he mentioned, Again, we discussed this afternoon, then why was the no-wake zone not moved on the side where there's swimmers within literally feet of power boats? For that reason alone, I don't believe that the original petition had anything to do with safety, and the fact that his house is right where the no-wake zone is. But we've discussed all of that. We've done our best to be neighbors and to come to a compromise that's safe for all the boaters and recreators. I mean, I have children on the lake. We do a lot of entertaining on the weekends. We do a lot of swimming, a ton of swimming, a ton of paddleboarding. You know, somebody says they fell over on a paddleboard. Well, I fall over on a paddleboard just standing on it. Okay, that's my shortcoming. This ordinance needs to move forward so that our lake can heal, so that our community can heal, so that our Lake Samish Association can heal and move forward. And that's what I'm requesting. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi again. My name's Mary Walker, and I live on Lake Samish. My family recreates on Lake Samish, mainly swimming, kayaking, fishing, and stand-up paddleboarding, and I'm going to tip my Santa list right now and tell them that I want a ski boat. So I've listened with interest at the last committees and evening meeting conversations. It seems that there's still some notion that you're getting hung up on the fact that paddlers, for want of a more inclusive term, and swimmers remain somehow under attack on Lake Samish and deal with monster wakes while in the water. State law, we discussed this, state law requires that paddlers, rowers, swimmers to remain within 150 feet of shores and docks. There's already a place for everybody on the lake to recreate safely. I paddleboard every day from probably April, depending on the water temperatures, or sooner until October. And my dogs, my two Labradors, swim alongside of me. Cover about half a mile to a mile out and then back. They're great swimmers, and I have to say that any testimony which has been given to imply that there are times of the day, and I heard this testimony, when you're unable to paddle on Lake Samish, are at the least misleading and at the worst blatantly false. I paddle every day, any time of the day, depending on what my schedule allows, and it's just not right. We also coordinate Halloween and Christmas stand-up paddleboard events, which occur in the middle of the afternoon and have never been interrupted by watercraft, and those include between 10 and 20 people out on paddleboards. So that's never been an issue. There are other issues, including AIS procedures, concerns, erosion, as well as watercraft ban for ballast-type boats. These issues are hijacking the original intent, I feel, of the June 4th ordinance and the current compromised ordinance, and I'm asking that the council remain focused on the original intent and not add on those AIS, erosion, and ballast-type watercraft issues. There was discussion this afternoon about the change on petition.org, and I think that you, Chairman, brought that up. And I just wanted to clarify the presence of signatures that fall outside of the Whatcom County area or even the state of Washington. Many of the homes on Lake Samish are owned by families, and they're legacy homes. And by now, those families have spread across the nation, and they're in Canada. We have a
30 seconds,
Canadian
please.
neighbor, a Californian neighbor. Our neighbors are from all over the world and nation. And so that may account for some of those signatures that fall outside of the area. So in summary, I would urge you to move 2019-479-480 forward and help us to ensure that the original concerns of the residents of Lake Samish will be met. Nothing is lost by assuming that new compromise position, and we appreciate your consideration of it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Heather Katahdin. Last time I was here, I came to thank you for opening the Severe Weather Warming Center. I'm retired from both educational and therapeutic horticulture, a fancy name for a gardener, but I've also worked over a decade in the past as a mental health clinician, specifically with citizens that have perceptual challenges and are unsheltered that our culture labels the homeless mentally ill. It's October now, and it's getting cold out, might even frost tonight. So my request is to please consider a seasonal winter FTE staff to lock and unlock a county building for a nighttime warming center, especially as it gets more severe weather. I can imagine November, December, January, February. I trust you guys to know how the system works and what staff. I know there's seasonal workers who mow lawns, and I am sure there's some money somewhere to put towards paying somebody to unlock and lock a building, even if it simply allows the many volunteers who will be coming on the streets to find the unsheltered who do not have shelter, either often because they're full or because they can't tolerate the conditions. And I brought some literature for you. I don't have enough for everybody. They're hand warmers, and a lot of the citizens last year and this year, we carry them in our coat pocket, in our car. We make eye contact with the people that are out there, you can tell. So thank you again. I really appreciate Barry's homeless work group task force. I've been attending as often as I can. And you guys really gave me a lot of hope last year when you opened that shelter.
30 seconds, please.
Me and many other people had been out in the cold for hours, all bundled up. The city workers at their severe shelter, they treated me like I was a homeless, indigent person. You guys opened up the shelter. Do your best, and here's my handout.
Why don't you save those for the people?
For other
Save
people.
those for the homeless people.
You will see people.
I ski and fish, I go tons.
You will see people.
Hey, come on, Heather. No, okay, I can find somebody to give it to you.
No, I'm not. You wait for me, and I'm giving it back to you, Heather. I'm not.
Give it to somebody else. You will, when you're out walking on the streets, you will see somebody there sitting or lying down. And you just walk up and say, how you doing? Would you like a hand warmer? And they'll either say thank you or no thank you. And sometimes when they say no thank you, they're willing to take it and give it to somebody else who really needs it. Thanks a lot.
With that, we'll close the public session. And first up, Ms. Frakes, I just need you to come forward for a second. I just have a question for you. I heard this rumor, which I need you to confirm, that you've been with us for 35 years. Is that true?
That is true.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
Everybody's here.
And I guess they thought the best present for you would be if we got out of here early. Well, forget that.
Yeah.
You picked the wrong day to have that anniversary.
Oh, every day's the wrong day for that, I think.
I just didn't want you to escape notice.
Can she go home now?
For Tyler, regarding the last person who spoke, you don't even have to answer it now, but do we have an option of having someone from the county open and shut a thing and let people in there without there being county staff, some county person there? We don't?
Mr. Schroeder indicated the answer is no.
We can work on that.
All right, next item up is the council consent agenda from finance.
Okay, the consent agenda, I was absent during these 4 items of consent agenda, and I believe there was 1-to-1 vote. What do we do about that? When one is absent, there's 1 for, 1 against.
That's what happens.
They all fail.
So then you would announce the vote, and then it's up to the council to decide if they wish to move it forward.
Okay, so I move items 1 through 4 and they had 1-to-1 vote, and I moved to the council to consider.
Mrs. Orman.
I'll second that, but I think items 1, 2, and 4 had the split votes, and item 3 was.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just do it again because I was absent.
But I'll
So
second your motion.
I'll second my motion. I will move the item 3 separately and then move 1, 2, and 4. So the item 3 on the consent agenda received 2-0 vote and 1 absentation because I wasn't in the meeting. So I move for approval.
It's been moved for,
AB 2019-486.
it's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Okay, now I move the items 1, 2, and 4 for consideration by the council.
And I think procedurally we'll need to do these individually, so.
Does it need a second? I'll second that because there was no committee recommendation.
But we will need to do each one individually, so if you'd like to read the first one. into the
Okay,
record.
I'll start that. The first item is AB 2019-494, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Geneva Consulting Services for coordination of Whatcom Lead Integrating Organization, LIO, in the amount of $68,616.11.
And if I understand it correctly, this is actually the Whatcom Local Integrating Organisation. Is that correct, Mr. Schroeder? Mr. Schroeder is indicating yes. It's been moved for consideration by the council. Do I have someone, did you make a motion to put that forward?
I made a motion
Okay.
for council to
Then as it didn't
consider.
make it through committee, I need a second.
I seconded it.
Mr. Donovan seconds, discussion. Ms. Brenner.
I'm not supporting it because I think this is part of the whole problem of how the water resources plan, program, everything has gotten sidetracked, and I'm not going to support anything more for the lead integrating organization unless and until the planning unit is put back in its place.
All right, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 5-2 with Brenner and Bird opposed. Mr. Sadhu, next item.
Next item is AB 2019-485, request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and Washington State Health Care Authority for substance use prevention services in high-need communities in the amount of $577,550. And I move it to the council for consideration because it received 1 vote.
Been moved for consideration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Buchanan seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favour say. Ms.
You want to
Brenner.
discuss it? I'll discuss it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll discuss it. I'm going to support it, but I think there's language in there that is not particularly objective language, and it does rub me the wrong way, but comes from the state and the feds. And the services, I think, are really important, so I'm going to support it, but I don't like some of the language.
Mr. Frazee.
Do you remember what page that was on?
139.
Yeah.
I think.
You got a good memory.
Yeah, well done.
Jeez.
I just want to read the language again, just so everyone knows what.
No, it's not 239.
139.
139.
You're-
So it's a definition.
Wait. Let me get there.
For health equity that the state gives, I believe. Washington State Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative, Prevention Services Project. So health equity they have means the attainment of the highest level of health for all people. Achieving health equity requires valuing everyone equally with focused and ongoing societal efforts to address avoidable inequalities, historical and contemporary injustices, and the elimination of health and healthcare disparities. And that's from Healthy People 2002. That was the problem.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be on record again, that.
Well, the person who brought this up said we should just deal with that first sentence, and to me, that not only says it all, it doesn't separate people out by perceived, let me say my own little biased comment, by perceived injustices, by perceived inequalities, by perceived disparities. I mean, it just says everybody's equal, and I think that's a much more positive way to say things like that instead of right away pitting people against each other. And I think when you put that kind of language in there, it does pit people against each other. I don't like that.
That's exactly what it does. That is political language that does nothing to help us further this document. It only helps us to divide our community further and to create groups that can point at each other and objectify each other. And I'm not about objectifying people or grouping them into a group that we can label them and send them on their way and somehow categorize them. If you want to support that language and support that type of action, you're welcome to do it, but it's not in the other contracts from the state. So if you agree with that, go for it. But I don't, and I won't vote for it, even if it means taking $500,000, because the state can't buy me. Yeah. It's,
Okay, all right, I'll mess it.
All right.
I'm trying not to laugh, too.
I know.
What? Nothing.
I'm sorry, there was this,
Just trying to get home.
Okay.
We have a motion.
We're done.
further discussion or amusing comments?
How about call?
Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with BYRD opposed. Mr. Sadhu,
Yeah,
item 4.
the next item is AB 2019-501, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Flow Analytics to assist with developing of 2020 Lake Whatcom stormwater utility fee in the amount of $28,715. And this also received one vote in the committee, and I so move for council's consideration.
It's been moved for consideration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Frazee seconds. Discussion, Ms. Brenner.
I'm opposed to it. I actually, for a minute there this afternoon, I thought, I guess I could sort of, but it's not a fee, it's a tax, and it's punitive in that it treats everybody the same when they shouldn't be treated the same if they do things that reduce or eliminate runoff off their property. There's no incentive in doing this kind of thing for anybody to do anything environmental on their property to make things better. And I think if we're going to use public money, instead of gifting it, you could do no interest loans to people to help them out, but other than that, people who reduce and or eliminate runoff from their property should not be punished. And to me, this is punitive, and it's a tax.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 5-2 with Brenner and BYRD opposed. And Mr. BYRD, I owe you an apology. My comment about your comment was borderline inappropriate.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Okay, well, please accept my apologies.
It was just borderline.
Okay.
I think
The other items are, the first item, AB 2019-478, request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interagency agreement between Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and State of Washington Puget Sound Partnership for coordination of Whatcom County local integrating organization in the amount of $75,000, council acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. This received a 2-1 vote in the committee. Mr. Tyler opposed, and I so move for approval.
Correction, I did not oppose that. I abstained.
Oh, sorry, that is true. It received vote, 2-1 vote, Mr. Tyler abstained.
So it's
And I so move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Brenner?
I'm not going to support it because, once again, this is going around the planning unit in issues of water resources, and this may or may not be related, but until the planning unit is put back in its rightful position, I don't think we should be doing this.
Further discussion? Mr. Byrd?
I don't need an answer to this. But isn't this just a little bit more confusing? I mean, we spent the whole day talking about watershed management.
Gee, and how
board,
confusing we
the
keep making
management
it.
team, the planning unit, and then it strikes me like, where's the LIO actually? Like, that's a whole nother body. Like, why isn't that one of those groups? Why are we creating that replicated process? Why? I mean, at the very least, why couldn't that be the management board? If it's not the planning unit or something else, I don't know. So. Just, it's another, I'm going to abstain again, because honestly, I'm not 100% comfortable with it, because I'm not feeling like it's very clear and well-defined at this point, so. More conversation needed. Hopefully that committee conversation from earlier today, we can continue to kind of figure that out and
That's
talk
not gonna
process
happen.
or identify it, so that's all. Thanks.
All right, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 5-1 with Byrd abstaining and Brenner opposed.
Okay. The next item is AB 2019-487, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a grant agreement between Whatcom County and State of Washington Department of Ecology to fund administrative support and action projects for Whatcom County Marine Resources Committee in the amount of $182,313. Council acting as Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. This received 3-0 vote in the committee, and I so move for approval.
Been moved for approval and discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
The next item is AB 2019-498, request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and Birchway Water and Sewer District for implementation of stormwater and water quality programs. Council acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. I was absent. I don't know, have a record for that. What was the vote on this? It passed 3-0.
Can't be 3-0.
Well, I mean,
It was
I think it passed
2-1.
You were absent. I didn't write it down.
We're chairs.
Okay,
I didn't write
it
it down.
received a 2-0 vote with Mr. Sidhu being absent from the meeting, so I so move for approval.
Been moved for approval. Any discussion?
Second.
That must have been a second.
It passed
Yeah.
3-0, it doesn't need a second.
It's been moved for approval. Any
Oh,
discussion?
that's true. No, it wasn't. He wasn't here.
Wasn't, but he's asking, he's moving it
Sorry.
now.
Yeah, it received 2-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
Someone please give Barry some coffee.
It's been a while since we stayed past 9:30, so.
Which is why
Barry
you should
jinxed
have
it
dark
this morning.
chocolate
It's
at
gonna be a
night.
quick night, remember that?
It was bad news, shouldn't it?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Okay, my committee is done.
Public Works.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be the second easiest item of the whole meeting.
Second easy.
Resolution in the matter of considering vacating a portion of Horton Road. This passed unanimously in committee because all this does is us giving the Public Works engineer permission to go out and check to see if it ought to happen and come back with findings and what do you call it, his opinion. So this is really just nothing but doing that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. And Madam Clerk, did you get a motion for that? No?
Didn't I move it?
Okay.
Oh, I thought I
You
did.
did?
Yeah. Did I
As
not?
long as you're happy, I'm happy.
You put down that I did
All right.
anyway, okay.
The next item from Planning and Development was removed.
That's been removed.
And the next item up is AB 2019-509, request confirmation of the county executive's appointments of Steve Bennett and Galen Hertz to the Public Advisory Board. Do I have a-
Second.
Mr. Donovan moves to concern. Ms. Brenner seconds. Any discussion, Mr. Byrd?
So I got questions for both of these. Steve Bennett is applying for the communities that experience health inequalities. I'm just curious, how does he qualify for that group?
Was he the one from Western?
Mr. Schroeder?
The professor from Western. So I'm just wondering, like, yeah, nothing in his statement says anything to that extent. Everything in his resume says that he's actually very, well, I mean, quite honestly, he's not a bad fit for the,
Yeah,
he's a great experience. I just don't see how he fits the group,
Oh, how does?
that seat, that specific seat that he qualifies for that seat.
How
So,
doesn't he fit that?
communities that experience health inequalities.
He probably, just as a professor, he could deal with
I
that.
think Barry's got an answer for me.
Somebody slap him.
Talk.
Oh,
We're
get
okay.
him.
He's in his place.
Just for a point of information, the Public Health Advisory Board did interview both candidates, and they passed along a recommendation. So they sat down with them, and I didn't personally, but folks on, I think there was 2 or 3 people that interviewed him, and they had a unanimous recommendation of both applicants. Just wanted to throw
I
that
can
out.
add something to that.
Ms. Brenner and then myself.
Yeah, a lot of these are kind of broad categories, and people can fit or not fit in them. And to me, this was one of those that he seems to have a good resume, and why would, that's why I asked, why wouldn't he fit? Maybe they asked him all
So
that.
I think I can answer your question, Mr. Byrd, is he spent several years working in Kenya and South Sudan, and which obviously was involved with people who are very disadvantaged. He's been involved in public health in multiple jurisdictions around the country, so I'm satisfied with his resume, Mr. Sadhu.
If you look at his education, he has a master's degree in public health and tropical medicine.
Oh, well.
He has, like, that's what his academics has been. And University of Minnesota School of Public Health. He has a PhD in public health.
That's pretty.
I'm
close.
not saying that that's not good experience. My question, here's the funny part to me, is that I actually, during this whole process of reformatting this group, said we need more people like him on it and less seats specific to this. So what I'm trying to figure out is just how he qualifies for this specific seat, because I didn't think that this was a guideline for us so much as it was, these are the seats that we're approving people for and that we want on there. And while I didn't agree with those seats, and I still don't, match or not is ultimately my question. And if he does, what's the match?
Ms. Brenner.
Well, it went through the Public Health Advisory Committee, and they recommended, and the executive, it's his appointments. And I believe that, I agree with you that we didn't have to have so much specifics put in, but we always are broad on how the specifics are interpreted because we have trouble getting people to fill positions anyway. And I don't see, I mean, nothing jumped out at me that he's not qualified. That's why I was fine with it.
Further discussion, Mr. Sadhu?
I think that, this is a public health advisory board. They look after a wide-ranging issues of public health, and he has a PhD in public health. How else you would think that, how are we going to find more qualified people to represent? It may not be, in somebody's mind, but these committees do require people with wide variety. Like sometimes we put people from public on that, who have been just advocates of public health. everybody doesn't have to be a doctor or anything. I mean, I think this person is amply qualified to work on a public health advisory board.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye on Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I may abstain.
That passes 6-0 with BYRD abstaining. Next item up is Mr. Galen Hers. Any discussion?
This is the same thing for me, honestly. And this one I do specifically remember because my request in reformatting, they were removing the seat for business, and I said that I felt that we still needed that voice on here, and so they'd put in the economic position for that. And this person is a nonprofit that I don't see that experience on their resume. So again, I don't feel like they fit that title at all. So I'll vote no on this one. But.
So does a nonprofit mean somebody's not qualified to be in an economic position? Because I know that, that's Colshan, right? Was it, or, yeah. They do an awful lot of business, get things built and stuff like that, so I don't know.
I think it's a different experience, and it's a different, more importantly, it's a different mindset about how you operate and how you go about things. And when I asked for that seat to be kept, that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see that mindset being brought to the table about, hey, how do we become more efficient? How do we, impact the bottom line positively?
The economic development community, like builders or something?
No, just the economic development, like finance, business, the for-profit sector of things, so.
I was going to say that these people don't handle money. These people don't handle budgets or spend money. They are policy and they are community representatives giving an advice to the council, representing different segments of the Public Health Advisory Board, And this is like the Cultural Land Trust, I know, they are concerned with the economic and social issues of the community. And public health does encompass these communities, these segment of our community, to have an advocate or who understands those issues. So, I mean, that's how I think. So I think that it's pretty appropriate for such a person to be on there to advocate for these kind of segments from our society, which Cultural Land Trust does.
Ms. Brennan.
So, I'm sorry, you feel like it does do
I think he is the right person.
Okay, I wasn't sure what you were saying.
No, that's what I'm saying, that he brings that perspective, which Cultural Land Trust does, and their whole mission is to work with those economic and social disadvantaged people to help them, disadvantage or create opportunities, put it this another way, create opportunities for those people. And public health is a related topic to that, bring a different perspective.
Oh, it says for social and economic, so I could see where you could do that. Yeah. It wasn't just economic. Yeah.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. with
6-1.
6-1 with BYRD opposed. Mr. Schroeder, could I just have you for a second? We had discussed AB 2019-511, which was the temporary homeless shelter, and I thought we were going to, you wanted us to vote on that tonight, but I don't see it on the agenda.
Which is it?
Earlier today, Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive, earlier today we had a discussion about a temporary ordinance
in regards
Oh, right.
to homeless encampments. That was just a discussion this morning, and so the idea is I would come back, work with council staff to add a couple of language in regards to where those individuals that are less than 18 can be referred to but not turned away at the door. We'll be working on that language, and we'll be introducing that in 2 weeks for consideration in 4 weeks.
For some reason, I thought we were doing it.
Yeah, we had a little bit of discussion there, but yeah, the idea
Fine,
would be
and-
to introduce in 2 weeks.
Yep, okay, fine. All right.
But you also said anybody who has any ideas or anything can get a hold of you about it.
Absolutely. You all know my phone number, where my office is, and my email address. Please come by.
We can find you.
Well, we can't come to your house?
Almost, almost.
Let's say he's listed in the phone book, but I'm not sure anybody still is listed in the phone book. All right, with that, we're on to introduction items. Do I have a motion to
Move
introduce?
approval.
Ms. Brown moves approval. Mr. Donovan seconds. Discussion. Seeing.
What?
You said discussion, I said, what's a phone book? Sorry, it's getting late.
Aye.
All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0.
rotting out
And I will bring you a phone book and show it to
I
you.
want to know when we're going to ban those, because I don't see them anywhere except for
We
like
should not
in the
have eaten
lawn.
it.
You show it to your children as an antique. All right, committee reports. Committee of the Whole, we didn't meet today. Did we? No. Yep, okay. Finance and Administrative Services, anything else?
Yeah, we had county executives report. It talked about the groundbreaking ceremony for the triage center. And we had a report from the Human Resources Division giving us the overview of the past 3 years, total number of employees, and the different bargaining units. And they have one new bargaining unit for sheriffs, lieutenants, and senior staff, which will be new addition to the bargaining unit. So that was the summary.
And then you had another item too.
Oh, yes. And there was the, presented by Ann Deacon and her staff, a quite informative report on the Affordable and Supportive Housing Fund. And that was passed unanimously by the committee.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Or we didn't even had a recommendation. It was just informational. Sorry. Yeah, it was just informational.
Thank you. Criminal Justice.
Yes, we had just one item on our agenda today. We had a presentation by Prosecutor Eric Ritchie. He went over some highlights of things that he's working on. A couple of things he talked about were the LEAD program, which is the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. That was a grant, a federal grant from the Department of Justice for $900,000 over 3 years. And he also, another thing that he talked about was a warrant quash day, which would be on November 20th, which is the ability for people to come in and get warrants for failure to appear quashed.
Thank you. Public Works, anything else?
Okay, we had a special presentation regarding the procedural history of WIRA 1 watershed management planning. It was excellent. It was full of so much incredible information. It actually reminded me of so much that happened that I'd already forgotten. So I recommend it to anybody who wasn't at the meeting to look at all that good information we got. And I think all but one council member was there. But this is for, since people are listening at home, yeah, if you look at a copy of this presentation, I think you'll appreciate it. Committee discussion, we had a discussion of the Whatcom County Strategic Plan to End Homelessness, and it was beautiful. I don't see how it's going to happen, but I hope it does. How's that? That's it.
And then planning and development.
We discussed the Lake Samish boating issue and decided that will come back again in 2 weeks, and we'll ask the sheriff and planning to bring information in regards to any data on erosion, as well as safety and enforcement.
And
Yeah.
Give us.
Temporary homeless facility, oh,
We discussed the temporary tiny home ordinance, which Tyler just came up and said that he will be bringing back in 4 weeks.
other items? I just want to say, I sent an email to the council. Came from Paul Jewell of the Washington State Association of Counties regarding a request for our county to contribute to funding a study on the tax effect of the proposed DNR changes to the marble muralet boundaries. I am expressing neither support nor opposition to it, but my point back to him is the council doesn't have the authority to approve that. It has to go back through the executive's office, and so I've sent that on to them for consideration to start with. So, council member updates.
Other items?
Yes.
The phone book thing, I am kind of curious about that, totally opposite subject, but
Well-
if this is something that we would deal with, because you drive by and you see them sitting out there for 6 months, is that something that we can regulate? I mean, is that not littering, or could that go to a committee for discussion or something? I mean, they decompose next to the stop sign for months because people don't pick them up.
I
because
totally agree.
Someone randomly throws them on the sidewalk next to your.
no, mine sits on
I
top
wonder
of
about
it
it every
till
single
it
time, so.
dissolves.
Interesting question. I know we can't do anything inside the city limits. I doubt that we could do anything inside the incorporated city limits.
No, but even if we could do it outside, I live outside the city limits.
I remember looking into that when I was chair of the neighborhood association on phone books and newspapers and
All those
and
other
all that other junk.
garbage.
It's not as much now as there was 10 years ago, but
Are you serious?
no, not
It
in our
is in my
neighborhood.
mailbox.
No, we're talking not in the mailbox, just on the ground.
No, on the
Because
ground.
they throw it on the ground
Oh,
next to it
yeah.
because they can't put it in
Yeah,
the mailbox.
that's what I'm talking about.
Well, I have this big flat mailbox, so they just sit it on top.
Well, it's not, no, that's not, different issue. This is
Oh,
just,
I thought you said
people
that-
don't pick up, they throw their paper,
Oh,
the paper boy throws it and it lands somewhere and then
You
they
got a
just
paper
stays.
boy?
We don't, no.
That's
Do
a
they
shame.
even
That's a
exist
whole other
anymore?
sad thing. I'll ask you more about it unless Todd has something else to add.
That was a dead end issue. We couldn't get any response from the city at the time, anyway.
All right, council member updates, Mr. Buchanan.
Nothing.
FRAZEY.
I just want to say thank you again to Karen Frakes for being here for 35 years.
Donna.
Happy birthday, Fiona. I know you're not watching, but I was going to call my daughter before she went to bed, but I think it's too late, so.
Ms. Brenner.
no, but thank you, Karen, for all you do.
Mr. Byrd.
Thank you. I hope you haven't had to sit through 35 years of these meetings, though.
Yeah.
Tonight.
It wasn't 35 years?
No, of these meetings.
Just with
What?
That's good, feeling young.
Seriously? Oh, my gosh.
County council years, though. Yeah.
That's
Kinda
like
dog years.
125 years.
No, it's just attending the council meetings.
Oh.
and the council's-
That probably
Actually,
would
it's
be-
county council duties. Remember, it's only one day every 2 weeks.
But you aged.
Okay.
Mr. Sadhu. And happy birthday, Fiona, if you're watching.
Happy birthday, who?
Fiona.
Of my daughter.
Oh, your daughter?
All right. With that, if there's no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you.